Hey, hey,
Mhm.
hey, welcome back to the Question Everything podcast. We're about to get into the 2024 presidential debate between Trump and Harris. Anything you want to say?
I just want to say, come watch with us and listen as we comment without our blinders, without our brainwashed blinders, forced blinders.
Right, we're trying to watch this from the perspective of having the veil removed from our eyes and being able to see past the BS they try to push to us. Okay.
Tied in the polls nationally, and their turn to speak. No pre-written notes allowed. There is no audience here tonight in this hall at the National Constitution Center. This is an intimate setting for two candidates who have never met.
President Trump won the coin toss. He chose to deliver the final closing statement of the evening. Vice President Harris selected the podium to the right.
So let's now welcome the candidates to the stage. Vice President Kamala Harris and President Donald Trump.
Here she comes.
Kamala Harris. Let's have a good debate.
Nice to see you. Have fun.
Thank you.
Welcome to you both. It's
Nice
wonderful
to
to
see
have
you.
you. It's an honor to have you both here tonight.
Good evening. We are looking forward to a spirited and thoughtful debate.
So let's get started. I want to begin tonight with the issue that voters repeatedly say is their number one issue, and that is the economy and the cost of living in this
Number
country.
one issue.
Vice President Harris, you and President Trump were elected 4 years ago, and your opponent on the stage here tonight often asks his supporters, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? When it comes to the economy, do you believe Americans are better off than they were 4 years ago?
So I was raised as a middle class kid, and I am actually the only person on this stage who has a plan that is about lifting up the middle class and working
Only
people of
Which
America.
is
person on
crazy
the
because
I believe
it's the
in the
opposite,
ambition, the aspirations, the dreams of the American people. And that is why I imagine and have actually a plan to build what I call an opportunity economy. Because here's the thing. We know that we have a shortage of
but what did you say?
I love how throughout the debate she says, I have a plan. I have a plan. Just
But
making sure
which
y'all know I have a plan.
I also would like to tap in on that and say she literally just said, as we all know, I'm the only one on this stage that has a plan for XYZ, which is crazy because that's the opposite of what it really is. And she's saying, as we all know. Okay.
She also repeats that multiple times throughout the debate. I'm the only one on the stage who insert this. I'm the only one on the stage who
Yeah,
insert that.
let's see.
homes and housing. And the cost of housing is too expensive for far too many people.
Facts.
We know that young families need support to raise their children, and I intend on extending a tax cut for those families of $6,000, which is the largest child tax credit that we have given in a long time, so that those young families can afford to buy a crib, buy a car seat, buy clothes for their children. My passion, one of them, is small businesses. My mother raised my sister and me, but there was a woman who helped raise us. We call her our second mother. She was a small business owner. I love our small businesses. My plan is to give a $50,000 tax deduction to start up small businesses, knowing they are part of the backbone of America's economy. My opponent, on the other hand, his plan is to do what he has done before, which is to provide a tax cut for billionaires and big corporations, which will result in $5 trillion to America's deficit. My opponent has a
I'm glad you
First
wanted to
shot,
pause.
bro. First shot out the gates.
I just want to say real quick how okay, sounds great. $50,000 for people who open a business for the first time. Okay, cool.
I like
What about
that.
the people who already have a business? Or what about after their first year when they're going through their business and things are going and oh, the economy's still bad. It's still hard to keep a business afloat. What about that? Like, okay, cool. Little bonus
plan
check.
that I call the Trump sales tax. which would be a 20% tax on everyday goods that you rely on to get through the month. Economists have said that that Trump sales tax would actually result for middle-class families in about $4,000 more a year because of his policies and his ideas about what should be the backs of middle-class people paying for tax cuts for billionaires.
Which they've a lot of the side of the blue has kept peddling this Republicans wanting tax cuts for the rich for years, decades, to the point where I believed it for a while. But when he was president, that's not what happened.
President Trump, I'll give you 2 minutes.
First of all, I have no sales tax. That's an incorrect statement. She knows that. We're doing tariffs on other countries. Other countries are going to finally, after 75 years, pay us back for all that we've done for the world. And the tariff will be substantial in some cases. I took in billions and billions of dollars, as you know, from China. In fact, they never took the tariff off because it was so much money they can't. It would totally destroy everything that they've set out to do. They're taking in billions of dollars from China and other places. They've left the tariffs on. When I had it, I had tariffs, and yet I had no inflation. Look, we've had a terrible economy because inflation which is really known as a country buster. It breaks up countries. We have inflation like very few people have ever seen before, probably the worst in our nation's history. We were at 21%, but that's being generous because many things are 50, 60, 70, and 80% higher than they were just a few years ago. This has been a disaster for people, for the middle class, but for every class. On top of that, we have millions of people pouring into our country from prisons and jails, from mental institutions and insane asylums, and they're coming in and they're taking jobs that are occupied right now by African Americans and Hispanics, and also unions. Unions are going to be affected very.
I just want to say, I'm sorry to keep pausing, but I find it so fascinating how her facial expressions right now are like, man, this guy is ridiculous. Where is he getting this woo-ha from? When this is all stuff that we all know. Like,
I was just thinking, why is she reacting like why is she shaking her head at him talking about inflation?
Right, I was thinking that too. He's literally
matter of fact, she's looking at him like, oh my gosh, I can't believe he's saying this right now.
No, seriously, like him saying, dude, our country is under fire. Inflation is breaking our country apart. And she's like, this guy. Can't believe it.
And the thing is, he hasn't even brought it back to the left or her or Biden or the Democrats yet. Like, he hasn't said, oh, this is your fault directly yet.
Yeah, well, we're only 6 minutes in, so I guess we'll see. But yeah, I agree.
True, but it's just like she's shaking her head as if he already made the connection.
Right, no, right off the gate. Right out the gate. But yeah, let's see.
Happening. You see what's happening with towns throughout the United States. You look at Springfield, Ohio. You look at Aurora in Colorado. They are taking over the towns. They're taking over buildings. They're going in violently. These are the people that she and Biden led into our country, and they're destroying our country. They're dangerous. They're at the highest level of criminality, and we have to get them out. We have to get them out fast. I created one of the greatest economies in the history of our country. I'll do it again and even better.
We are going to get to immigration and border security during this debate, but I would like to let Vice President Harris respond on the economy.
Well, I would love to. Let's talk about what Donald Trump left us. Donald Trump left us the world.
So he asked her about the economy, about her comments on the economy. He asked her to defend herself on what he just said about the economy. And the first thing she says, let's talk about Donald Trump.
Right. Like completely ignoring the fact that our economy has been under fire as a result of this current administration that she serves. Like just completely, She never mentioned, this is what's happening. We made a mistake, blah, blah, blah.
Complete deflection.
No accountability. Yeah, but okay.
Worst unemployment since the Great Depression. Left us the worst unemployment since the Great Depression. Donald Trump left us the worst public health epidemic in a century. Donald
That's not
Trump
what you were
left us
asked.
the worst
Right.
attack on our democracy since the Civil War.
We're asking about economy.
The worst attack on our democracy since the Civil War.
Civil
What
War
are you
is
talking about?
crazy.
What?
When I heard that, I was like, what?
What is she?
What are
Literally,
you
what
talking
is she
about?
talking about?
I
Oh,
understand racial tensions have always been a thing, and they are a thing now, and they were a thing under Trump, but not Civil War level.
come on. Protests and looting have still continued under the Biden administration. If that's the Civil War she's talking about. Okay.
And
Truly at a loss of words, but we'll keep going.
what we have done is clean up Donald Trump's mess. What we have done and what I intend to do is build on what we know are the aspirations and the hopes of the American people. But I'm going to tell y'all in this
Wow.
debate tonight, you're going to hear from the same old tired playbook, a bunch of lies, grievances, and name calling.
We are
True, that's true though. He's spot
broski.
on.
Broski. We
She said
are
nothing about the economy.
we're 5 minutes into the debate, and I remember when I first watched this, the feeling I had in my gut. We're 5 minutes into the debate, and she said, what you're gonna hear is, and I'll play it back actually.
Tired playbook. But I'm going to tell y'all in this debate tonight, you're going to hear from the same old tired playbook, a bunch of lies, grievances, and name calling.
Mind you, the lies, grievances, and name calling were literally spearhead. You know what? I don't want to spoiler alert.
He said she told you what she was gonna do.
She told
Straight up.
She told us the plan.
The same way that we always say, like, they tell us
Right.
for it to work. They tell us. They tell you in your face.
Right.
They tell you in your
This is
face. She
it's
literally
magic.
she introduced herself. She said, I'm gonna go, like, I'm reading from the playbook.
I remember when I
That's
was
what you're
in
gonna
this
hear here.
when I was in this door-to-door sales job, really crappy job. But when I was in that job, I learned a lot of marketing tools, and one of those things was a preemptive strike, which is basically talking about something before you're going to talk about it so they're psychologically ready for it. And that's what it feels like. Okay, let's keep going.
I didn't know you
What
did
you're
that.
going to
Yeah. Blip in my life. Let's keep going.
hear tonight is a detailed and dangerous plan called Project 2025 that the former president intends on implementing if he were elected again. I believe very strongly that the American people want a president who understands the importance of bringing us together.
I'm sorry, it was just really funny how he rolled his eyes when she mentioned Project 2025, and we'll see why.
We have so much more in common than what separates.
Sorry, what?
She's pandering to the media, bro.
Dude.
She's really, like, I knew that she would be, but I didn't think it would be to this extent, and I didn't think she would be so supported in pandering to, like, quote unquote social media. I didn't think she would be supported by the regulators the way that she was.
Well, I did want to talk briefly about how her best friend, one of her best friends, is one of the heads of ABC News Media. So even before the debate, there was speculation that she got the questions before the debate. So when I watched the debate, I kept thinking about that. Like, literally, she's besties with ABC. Like, she got the inside scoop. You know, like, she came ready with her talking points cemented. But let's keep going.
us, and I pledge to you to be a president for all Americans.
President Trump will give you a minute here to respond.
Number one, I have nothing to do, as you know, and as she knows better than anyone, I have nothing to do with Project 2025. That's out there. I haven't read it. I don't want to read it purposely. I'm not going to read it. This was a group of people that got together. They came up with some ideas, I guess some good, some bad, but it makes no difference. I have nothing to do. Everybody knows I'm an open book. Everybody knows what I'm going to do. Cut taxes very substantially and create a great economy like I did before. We had the greatest economy. We got hit with a pandemic. And the pandemic was not since 1917, where 100 million people died, has there been anything like it. We did a phenomenal job with the pandemic. We handed them over a country where the economy and where the stock market was higher than it was before the pandemic came in. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. We made ventilators for the entire world. We got gowns, we got masks, we did things that nobody thought possible. And people give me credit for rebuilding the military. They give me credit for a lot of things, but not enough credit for the great job we did with the pandemic. But the only jobs they got were bounce back jobs. These were jobs bounced back, and it bounced back and it went to their benefit. But I was the one that created them. They know it, and so does everybody else.
Vice President Harris, I'll let you respond.
So Donald Trump has no plan for you. And when you look at his economic plan, it's all about tax breaks for the richest people.
What a statement. I just want to say she's going to get away with this with her supporters who've never watched a Donald Trump interview. But anybody who's seen even one interview that he's released in the past month, because I don't know if you've noticed, but in the past 3 or so months, he's been doing interviews like 3 times a week on different platforms, completely speaking about his policy and what he wants and what he's planning to do. So when she's saying he has no plan, he has no plan. It's like the pot calling the kettle black. And it's also not even that, because he literally has, like he said, he's an open book and has talked about his plans. Like, what do you mean he has no plans? It's crazy.
I think the great job on the pandemic comment was a little bit exaggerated, in my opinion. Little side note. But I gotta watch these interviews that you're talking about, because I haven't seen them. And I've seen no word of them anywhere either.
That's the thing, like, you know, on Twitter or anywhere, you wouldn't see that he's been on a crazy press run, like nonstop, every single week, multiple, from the most popular sources to the most like fringe people who are like popular on YouTube. Like, he's really, but anyway, let's keep going.
I am offering what I describe as an opportunity economy, and the best economists in our country, if not the world, have reviewed our relative plans for the future of America. What Goldman Sachs has said is that Donald Trump's plan would make the economy worse, mine would strengthen the economy. What the Wharton School has said is Donald Trump's plan would actually explode the deficit. 16 Nobel laureates have described his economic plan as something that would increase inflation and by the middle of next year would invite a recession.
So are we supposed to sorry, go on.
Go ahead.
Are we supposed to just ignore our own personal experience? If none of that happened during his administration a few years ago, why would all of a sudden that happen? But
honestly, who are these 16 Nobel laureates?
Right. I was just thinking that too.
Is their commentary published, as well as the other 2 people / sources that she mentioned?
Right.
Is this published? Like, did they tell her personally?
I'm saying, right? And also, are they paying, like...
How come the regulators didn't fact check her on that?
From my understanding, they didn't fact check her on anything in this debate, but I guess we'll see that. Let's keep going.
You just have to look at where we are and where we stand on the issues. And I'd invite you to know that Donald Trump actually has no plan for you, because he is more interested in defending himself than he is in looking out for you.
Crazy work.
Hot calling the kettle
went to the
black.
local school of finance,
Bro.
and many of those professors, the top professors, think my plan is a brilliant plan. It's a great plan. It's a plan that's going to
Who are
bring
these
up
top
our work,
professors?
our value as a country. It's going to
question.
make people want to be able to go and work and create jobs and create a lot of good, solid money for our country. And just to finish off, she doesn't have a plan. She copied Biden's plan,
Right.
and it's like 4 sentences, like run, spot, run. 4 sentences that are just, oh, we'll try and lower taxes. She doesn't have a plan. Take a look at her plan. She doesn't have a plan.
Mr. President, I do want to drill down on something you both brought up.
Really quick.
The vice.
You mentioned earlier in our conversation for this episode that a policy section had just recently popped up on her website. Can you tell us more about that?
So I just went on her website. This is kamalaharris.com. And so, boom. All right, boom. This is the important thing about like being in the moment and experiencing things live, because this issues tab that you can see on her website has only been available the day after the debate. This issues tab on her website did not exist all of these months leading up into the debate. You know, this wasn't the first time where he's pushed, on TV or whatever and been like, what's her plan? She has no plan. What's her plan? She has no plan. Everybody's been talking about this for months. But sure enough, the day after the debate, she has a whole page for issues with specific plans, as someone would say. So this is new.
They were writing this up during the debate, like listening
Right.
to what she said, like, oh, that's a good idea. Let me put it in the list.
What's nuts is like theoretically all it does take is maybe like 5 hours for people to lock in. Well, I don't know, it's probably more complicated than that. But like a day at least to just lock in and figure out what you want to do and say. Like it shouldn't. But anyway, let's just press play.
The president brought up your tariffs. You responded. I do want to drill down on something you both brought up. The vice president brought up your tariffs. You responded, and let's drill down on this because your plan is what she calls is essentially a national sales tax. Your proposal calls for tariffs, as you pointed out here, on foreign imports across the board. You recently said that you might double your plan, imposing tariffs up to 20% on goods coming into this country. As you know, many economists say that with tariffs at that level, costs are then passed on to the consumer.
I just want to say that the only reason they can break apart his plan right now and kind of ask him about it and really like get in on him about it is because of the fact that he has one, and they wouldn't be able to be like, hey, why is your plan fucked up to Kamala because she doesn't have any. So like they, for any point, they couldn't be like, hey, why is your view on this messed up? But anyway.
They can actually look up these details in real time.
Right.
However, they do talk about Kamala's changing policies. They do talk about that, and they address it directly. They ask her, what can you tell the voters
Yeah, well, I guess
about
we'll see.
the change in your policies and the change in your ideals?
Yeah, so
They
I'm
literally
excited
asked her about it.
to see
And
that.
all she says is, well, we'll see. We'll see what she says.
Right, we'll see. Okay.
Vice President Harris has argued it'll mean higher prices on gas, food, the country. As you know, many economists say that with tariffs at that level, costs are then passed on to the consumer. Vice President Harris has argued it'll mean higher prices on gas, food, clothing, medication, arguing it costs the typical family nearly $4,000 a year. Do you believe Americans can afford higher prices because of tariffs?
They're not going to have higher prices. What's going to have and who's going to have higher prices is China and all of the countries that have been ripping us off for years. I was the only president ever. China was paying us hundreds of billions of dollars, and so were other countries. And, if she doesn't like them, they should have gone out and they should have immediately cut the tariffs. But those tariffs are there 3.5 years now under their administration. We are going to take in billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars. I had no inflation, virtually no inflation. They had the highest inflation perhaps in the history of our country because
Sorry, she looks disgusted right now. Like her
Right,
nose
and
is
it's like,
hilarious.
girl, you lived in the same economy we did. We know damn well you. Well, I don't know. She's probably doing better right now because she's getting paid directly. But
Oh, she probably doesn't even know or care. Like,
yeah,
I've never seen a worse period of time. People can't go out and buy cereal or bacon or eggs or anything else. The people of our
I was talking to you about this earlier about the fact that like right now just buying a box of cereal, I kind of debate it because I'm wondering if $7 is worth it. And we were talking about how restaurant prices have astronomically gone up in the past 2 or so years, to the point where every time I go on Yelp and look at a picture of a menu from 7 months ago, I just know the price has increased.
it's
Whereas a few
actually
years ago,
exponential.
right, whereas a few years ago, when I saw a menu that was 2 years ago, I was like, okay, the price increased. But if it was a few months ago, I was like, okay, this should be the same price. What he's saying is, I don't know more terrible time. I kind of resonate with that because everybody in our age group is talking about how hard it is to buy a house and to pay for basic stuff like groceries and gas and just like your basic stuff, not even talking about clothes and stuff. And this is new for me, but
And I feel like this has been talked about for a good couple of years now. But it's only recently that we've been talking about inflation. So on top of the fact that things have been relatively unaffordable for a long time, and that it's been hard to buy a house and have all these things that you need to have a regular life here in the US. It's just on top of that, things are getting everything is getting more expensive, and as you had mentioned earlier, the wages are not rising with the prices.
yeah,
Prices.
yeah. So it's honestly insane. But yeah, let's keep going because I don't I don't understand how people can gaslight me to think that like, oh, inflation is always a thing. Okay, but this rate recently is
This is different.
crazy. But let's go on.
our country are absolutely dying with what they've done. They've destroyed the economy. And all you have to do is look at a poll. The polls say 80 and 85 and even 90% that the Trump economy was great, that their economy was terrible.
Vice President
Which you don't
Harris, I
even
do
need
want
a
to ask
poll
for your
to see
response. I heard
that.
what the president said there because the Biden administration did keep a number of the Trump tariffs in place. So how do you respond?
Well, let's be clear that the Trump administration resulted in a trade deficit, one of the highest we've ever seen in the history of America. He invited trade wars. You want to talk about his deal with China?
We want
What
to talk
he
about
ended up doing
you.
is
We asked
under Donald Trump's
you.
presidency,
Right.
he ended up selling American chips to China to help them improve and modernize their military, basically sold us out when a policy about China should be in making sure the United States of America wins the competition for the 21st century, which means focusing on the details of what that requires, focusing on relationships with our allies, focusing on investing in American-based technology so that we win the race on.
That sounds like literally what Trump has been trying to do and the opposite of what the Biden administration has done. They have destroyed our relationship with foreign leaders. Like, what? And they've been very anti-American. Like, I don't.
AI on quantum computing.
He's trying to take the Republican voters and the left voters are going to Trump. Bria, this feels like a moment where the parties are going to switch. The parties are going to switch. And I've low-key, ever since I learned about this in U.S. history in high school, I've been waiting for this moment. I'm like, bro, am I going to be here in the U.S. when this happens? Because that would be so cool. But I feel like if not right now, then very soon, the quote-unquote Democrats and Republicans, the people in them and the values are going to switch.
Right.
Like they did during the time of Kennedy.
Right. I hope so,
Because
honestly.
her
Well, I don't know if I hope
quote-unquote left voters are going to Trump, and she's trying to take his Republican voters, because what this debate showed me and with her points and her policies, quote unquote, are giving conservative. They're giving Republican. What?
I don't know, because her policies definitely seem like the whole Democrat thing is social programs. Social programs. Like giving people giving people just enough so they have to keep running back to you. But it seems like the conservative side is like private sector. Let's improve the private sector. And like basically let's improve how businesses run and how much they can make so Americans can be better. But the Democrats are
What
like,
about
let's
the
give
small
America.
business?
But Democrats are like, let's give Americans who are underserved more programs so that they can have just enough to survive. But I don't know if I jive with that anymore.
I don't know, because I feel like Trump is talking about the people, and he's talking about the economy, but he's talking about the economy to better the economy for the American people. And she's talking about helping small businesses, and yes, helping the families, but she's also later going to talk about how she's always supported fracking, and she's going to talk about supporting Israel.
Mind
And
you,
I don't know, like I
mind
just see
you,
some trends that I feel like align more so with what I'm used to hearing from the red side, quote
but this
unquote.
is what I'll say. The debate, they're asking them good questions on what their policies are, but let's not forget that a lot of the argument for the blue side right now is abortion rights, LGBT rights, um,
Right.
and anti-climate change. That seems like the stuff they're running on. To me, they're not really running on like, hey, let's make the economy better. But when asked these questions, they have answers for them. But that's not like the main issues that they're propelling us, that they're making us believe are most important to them, in my opinion, from what I keep seeing. So,
I agree with you. I still think this is a precursor though, because I feel like the Venn diagram is getting a little big.
yeah, yeah. But at the same time, like, they're both going farther in the direction. Like, let's keep watching.
On what we need to do to support America's workforce so that we don't end up having on the short end of the stick in terms of workers' rights. But what Donald Trump did, let's talk about this, with COVID, is he actually thanked President Xi for what he did during COVID. Look at his tweet. Thank you, President Xi,
What does that have to
exclamation
do with
point,
anything?
when we know that she was responsible for lacking and not giving us transparency about the origins of COVID.
President Trump, I'll let you respond.
First of all,
Well,
they bought their
anything.
chips from Taiwan. We hardly make chips anymore because of philosophies like they have and policies like they have. I don't say her because she has no policy. Everything that she believed 3 years ago and 4 years ago is out the window. She's going to my philosophy now. In fact, I was going to send her a MAGA hat. She's gone to my philosophy. But if she ever got elected, she'd change it. And it will be the end of our country. She's a Marxist. Everybody knows she's a Marxist. Her father's a Marxist professor in economics, and he taught her well. But when you look at what she's done to our country, and when you look at these millions and millions of people that are pouring into our country monthly, where it's, I believe, 21 million people, not the 15 that people say, and I think it's a lot higher than the 21. That's bigger than New York State pouring in. And just look at what they're doing to our country. They're criminals. Many of these people coming in are criminals. And that's bad for our economy, too. You know, you mentioned before, we'll talk about immigration later. Well, bad immigration is the worst thing that can happen to our economy. They have, and she has, destroyed our country with policy that's insane. Almost policy that you'd say they have to hate our country.
President Trump, thank you. Lindsay?
I want to turn to the issue of abortion.
What'd you say?
I think they both went off topic here.
And Trump, you've often touted that you were able to
Okay.
kill Roe v. Wade. Last year, you said that you were proud to be the most pro-life president in American history. Then last month, you said that your administration would be great for women and their reproductive rights. In your home state of Florida, you surprised many with regard to your 6-week abortion ban, because you initially had said that it was too short. And you said, quote, I'm going to be voting that we need more than 6 weeks. But then the very next day, you reversed course and said you would vote to support the 6-week ban. Vice President Harris says that women shouldn't trust you on the issue of abortion because you've.
That's crazy to start off with. Like, hey, your opponent says people shouldn't trust you about this. How do you feel? Elaborate.
Changed your
That's what she's
position
been
so
doing
many
the whole
times.
time.
Like, what
That's what she's
the?
been doing the
Therefore,
whole time,
why
throwing
should they
jabs
trust
at him
The
like,
reason
She literally said, why should we trust you? We don't trust you, bro. Why should we trust you?
you've changed your
at
position
least
so many
say,
times?
oh, the people don't think they can trust you. Like, what's the point of saying that's literally just to, like, that's just to provoke? Because she
Yeah.
could really have said and stayed neutral. Like, we're talking about the people here,
She
the
could have
people
been
that
like,
matter, right? The
hey,
country.
President Trump, how do you feel about abortion? What is your plan?
Or
Instead of saying,
literally, she
hey,
could have just replaced Kamala with the people. The people, the women in the
or
country, the
she
people
could
in the
have
country don't
literally,
think they can trust you.
or she could have not brought in the personal jab about how people can't trust a president and been like, how do you feel about abortion? And let the people decide instead of saying off bat, you're not trustworthy,
The,
prove us wrong.
the
Okay,
emotional part could have definitely been left out.
it wasn't.
Therefore, why should they trust
So
you?
the reason I'm doing that vote is because the plan is, as you know, the vote is, they have abortion in the 9th month. They even have, and you can look at the governor of West Virginia, the previous governor of West Virginia, not the current governor, is doing an excellent job, but the governor before, he said the baby will be born and we will decide what to do with the baby. In other words, we'll execute the baby. And that's why I did
And she's
that,
shaking her
because
head.
that predominates,
When
because
it's
they're
a-
radical. The Democrats are radical in that. And her vice presidential pick, which I think was a horrible pick, by the way, for our country, because he is really out of it. But her vice presidential pick says abortion in the 9th month is absolutely fine. He also says execution after birth. It's execution, no longer abortion, because the baby is born, is okay. And that's not okay with me, hence the vote. But what I did is
Rhea, did he
something
say that?
for 50.
Yes, I actually did have an article to show about that.
Because that was a part where I seriously doubted. Like, oh no.
So this article from Daily Signal says under government tumults, babies born alive in botched abortions were left to die. Then he removed reporting requirements.
What do you mean
So
reporting
for more
requirements?
context, if you guys take time to look into this, basically in, I forget which state it was, but where he was, they are allowed to abort babies after they're born if there's like defects or if the baby doesn't come out the way the mom intended it to. Which some people might feel is justified, but that's after the baby is born, being able to terminate it. And he approved these things. And also, okay, but yeah.
52 years they've been trying to get Roe v. Wade into the states. And through the genius and heart and strength of 6 Supreme Court justices, we were able to do that. Now, I believe in the exceptions for rape, incest, and life of the mother. I believe strongly in it. Ronald Reagan did also. 85% of Republicans do. Exceptions. Very important. But we were able to get it, and now states are voting on it. And for the first time, you're going to see, look, this is an issue that's torn our country apart for 52 years.
For real.
Every legal scholar, every Democrat, every Republican, liberal, conservative, they all wanted this issue to be brought back to the states where the people could vote. And that's what happened. Now, Ohio, the vote was somewhat liberal. Kansas, the vote was somewhat liberal, much more liberal than people would have thought. But each individual state is voting. It's the vote of the people now. It's not tied up in the federal government. I did a great service in doing it. It took courage to do it. And the Supreme Court had great courage in doing it. And I give tremendous credit to those 6 justices.
There is no.
I just want to say I actually think it is a very great idea and very noble to have each individual state vote for what they want for abortion, because every state has very different ideals and moral codes. Like, we wouldn't want the country to just come to one agreement across the board. That wouldn't make sense. Like,
It also truly allows for that freedom of choice that we all want,
right. Us
Because
to vote instead of
if you want to live somewhere where it's really strict on it, you can go ahead. If you want to go live somewhere where it's not strict on it, you have somewhere where you can go. It's
right.
not one policy for the entire nation.
Seriously.
State in this country where it is legal to kill a baby after it's born.
Supreme Court had great courage in doing it. And I give tremendous credit to those 6 justices.
There is no state in this country where it is legal to kill a baby after it's born.
And this was the first fact checked out of many that they did during this debate that were complete lies that they fed us to make Trump look like a lunatic, and I have some evidence to show it. Here is a very simple graph you could find with how late into pregnancy abortion is legal. So as you can see, there are a few states, I believe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, at least 7 states where there's no limit of time of how late into your pregnancy you can abort the child. So her saying there's no state where abortion is legal until the 9th month is a fallacy, because there are 6 states where there is no limit of time on abortion. And it's crazy that they live fact check the president and they were incorrect.
If anything, it's an exaggeration. Like it's a generalization because there's obviously a technicality.
And even that is just lies when you take account for Tim Walz, her vice president, the policies that he helped enact and stuff like that. Like, if you take into consideration that people literally killed their child after they were born, and it was legal, what do you mean?
Madam Vice President, I want to get your response to President Trump.
Well, as I said, you're going to hear a bunch of lies, and that's not actually a surprising fact. Let's understand how we got here. Donald Trump hand-selected 3 members of the United States Supreme Court with the intention that they would undo the protections of Roe v. Wade.
He literally just said we want it to be for the states. And she said he is trying to repeal Roe v. Wade. Like, girl, what?
They did exactly as he intended. And now in over 20 states, there are Trump abortion bans, which make it criminal for a doctor or nurse to provide health care. In one state, it provides prison for life. Trump abortion bans that make no exception even for rape and incest, which understand what that means.
Which he literally took like 2 minutes to say that every Republican believes that women should have the right for that.
I remember hearing outrage about this and hearing statements like these that like no exceptions are allowed. So I would like to fact check that. Actually.
Okay.
Because I don't actually know.
Wait, what do you mean no exceptions are allowed?
Because I remember a couple months ago, when this was being talked about, when the Roe v. Wade appeal was going on, what I heard was what Kamala is addressing, that the entire thing was being repealed nationally, and that there weren't any exceptions, even for cases like that, like
Well, we don't even have
abused.
to, dude, we can literally just look at the graph like, okay, because this is as of May 31st, 2024. So this is current. Um, the lowest amount of time is 6 weeks or earlier. So there's no state where abortion is completely illegal. There are only states where it's illegal to get an abortion past 6 weeks.
Right, but I'm saying these exceptions of abuse and maltreatment, you know. I remember hearing a lot of fear around that from people in general.
I just don't want them to gaslight us because Broski 1.5 minute before she said that every Republican from Ronald Reagan times believes that women who rape, incest, what have you, has the right to. So like I feel like we don't even need to fact check that because what?
A survivor of a crime of violation to their body does not have the right to make a decision about what happens to their body next. That is immoral. And one does not have to abandon their faith or deeply held beliefs to agree. The government, and Donald Trump certainly, should not be telling a woman what to do with her body.
He
I
never
have talked
did.
with women.
Her social media manager is $1 million, like the best,
Right,
the
because
very
the
best.
sound bites are gonna
Because
be incredible.
earlier, I was like, just now, I was drawing attention to what I have seen the people talk about on the internet and in person around that time, of all the fear of, oh my gosh, like they're not even going to allow like incest victims and rape victims. They're not even going to allow them to do anything, like pregnancies that are like, I forgot what it was called, but it's like when the pregnancy is in a part that it's not supposed to be, in your like fallopian tube or something,
Well, basically,
that
what
can
the
be
mama
deadly to you.
behind.
Like, exceptions like that. I remember a lot of talk about how, oh, with this appeal, with this repeal, not even these exceptions will be allowed, and that's exactly what she's referring to right now. That's exactly what she's talking about, and then she's going even harder. Just even she's repeating things that I've heard on social media
Right.
throughout the year,
No, she's
throughout the
really
year
good.
slash past 2 years.
She's really good at like utilizing the talking points that a lot of sheeple keep pushing, and she's just pushing it further to kind of add credibility to them. Even though she's literally lying through her teeth. But because she's saying it now, it's adding more credibility because of who she is. Crazy. Let's keep going.
Around our country. You want to talk about this is what people wanted? Pregnant women who want to carry a pregnancy to term, suffering from a miscarriage, being denied care in an emergency room because the healthcare providers are afraid they might go to jail, and she's bleeding out in a car in the parking lot.
She's good with these personal anecdotes. Really good.
Bro, the intonation in her voice when she goes into these anecdotes that aren't even
Yeah.
her
Like,
anecdotes
like
throughout the debate is so interesting to me, because it almost feels like, and I'm not trying to be sexist here, but it almost feels like she's really playing into the woman, feminine power, motherly. I am woman.
like the
I want to
super
take care of you.
right,
He's
like
not going to take care of you. I'm going to take care of you.
right. Like the super sympathetic, I actually understand your feelings.
Like, I feel you.
Right. Like child please. But okay, let's keep going.
She didn't want that. Her husband didn't want that. A 12 or 13-year-old survivor of incest being forced to carry a pregnancy to term? They
Which are literally the people they would allow to go through with what
don't want that.
it's crazy.
And I pledge to you, when Congress passes a bill to put back in place the protections of Roe v. Wade, as President of the United States, I will proudly sign it into law. But understand, If Donald Trump were to be reelected, he will sign a national abortion ban. Understand, in his Project 2025, there would be a national abortion, a monitor that would be monitoring your pregnancies, your miscarriages.
He literally says he doesn't support and didn't read Project 2025.
I think the American people believe that certain freedoms, in particular the freedom to make decisions about one's own body, should not be made by the government.
Thank you, Vice President Harris.
Well, there she goes again. It's a lie. I'm not signing a ban, and there's no reason to sign a ban because we've gotten what everybody wanted. Democrats, Republicans, and everybody else, and every legal scholar wanted it to be brought back into the states, and the states are voting. And it may take a little time, but for 52 years, this issue has torn our country apart, and they've wanted it back in the states. And I did something that nobody thought was possible. The states are now voting. What she says is an absolute lie. And as far as the abortion ban, no, I'm not in favor of abortion ban, but it doesn't matter because this issue has now been taken over by the states.
Would you veto a national abortion ban if it came
Well, I
to your
won't
desk?
have to because, again, two things. Number one, she said she'll go back to Congress. She'll never get the vote. It's impossible for her to get the vote, especially now with the 50-50, essentially 50-50 in both Senate and the House. She's not going to get the vote. She can't get the vote. She won't even come close to it. So it's just talk. You know what it reminds me of when they said they're going to get student loans terminated, and it ended up being a total catastrophe. The student loans, and then her.
They just lied to us and like expected.
Why aren't you talking about that part?
I remember
that. I remember that.
I don't, bro. This is actually bringing up memories. Like I remember that was a big thing that Biden ran on. Am I crazy?
I feel like that was literally like how he won. That's how he got the vote.
Right.
That's how he got the vote.
Even for a little bit of time, he almost had us thinking he was going to do it. Then out of nowhere, the plan got scrapped and people stopped talking about it. Like, yo, what?
Technicalities too. Like they did something with it, but it was like for specific people.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. That's what the blue side, bro. That's what the blue side keeps doing, targeting specific people, usually poor people.
To have like, yeah.
No, but hear me out. Targeting specific people, usually poor people, not every American. And the thing is, all of these things they do for poor people keep them poor. Because you can't go past a certain income and still have these benefits. But
and the income that cuts you off from it is not like it's not that much better.
No, seriously. But let's keep going.
Her boss, if you call him a boss, he spends all his time on the beach. But look, her boss went out and said, we'll do it again. We'll do it a different way. And he went out, got rejected again by the Supreme Court. So all these students got taunted with this whole thing about this whole idea. And how unfair that would have been, part of the reason they lost, to the millions and millions of people that had to pay off their student loans. They didn't get it for free. But they were saying it's the same way that they talked about that they talk about abortion.
But if I could just get a yes or no, because your running mate, J.D. Vance, has said that you would veto it if it did come to your desk.
Well, I didn't discuss it with J.D. in all fairness.
It's not a national bill.
What?
They keep the moderator. This is like the second time they asked, well, would you veto it if it came to you? He answered, well, it's not a national bill, so that question
They're
is
literally
invalid.
trying to get that.
And they go, well, if we were in the reality where that was a valid question and it was a national bill, would you veto it?
They're trying to get him to say yes so they can have that 5-second clip.
And I don't mind if he has a certain view, but I think he was speaking for me, but I really didn't. Look, we don't have to discuss it because she'd never be able to get it, just like she couldn't get student loans. They couldn't get student loans. They didn't even come close to getting student loans. They taunted young people and a lot of other people that had loans. They can never get this approved. So it doesn't matter what she says about going to Congress. Well, wonderful. Let's go to Congress. Do it. But the fact is that for years they wanted to get it out of Congress and out of the federal government. And we did something that everybody said couldn't be done. And now you have a vote of the people on abortion.
Vice President Harris, I want to give you your time to respond, but I do want to ask, would you support any restrictions on a woman's right to an abortion?
I absolutely support reinstating the protections of Roe v. Wade. And as you rightly mentioned, nowhere in America is a woman carrying a pregnancy to term and asking for an abortion. That is not happening. It's insulting to the women of America. And understand what has been happening under Donald.
Her saying it's insulting to the women in America, like this doesn't happen often enough. Like
Donald Trump's abortion bans. Couples who pray and dream of having a family are being denied IVF treatments. What is happening in our country?
What are you
working
talking about?
people, working women who are working 1 or 2 jobs, who can barely afford childcare as it is, have to travel to another state to get on a plane sitting next to strangers to go and get the health care she needs.
Really pulling at the heartstrings here. And I also want to say how warped our country has become, because when I was a teenager and I was under the thought that, for God forbid, if something really crazy happened and I, God forbid, would have to get an abortion or something like that. I lived in Florida, and I knew they were strict on that stuff, so God forbid I might have to go to a different state and do that. But the fact that there's another state available to you up until how much time you need is a blessing. And also, if you're a woman who is, say, out of wedlock and she makes that mistake and she has a child and is ready to terminate that child, honestly, whatever she has to go through, whatever ramifications, low-key, that's on her, and that is like something that is your mistake to fix. You know what I mean? Like, I know that it is important for women to have control over their bodies, but to make it super mega ultra easy, I don't know if that's the best thing either. I'm not saying I think it's a bad thing, but I'm just like,
I feel like after a very late point, personally, I feel like after a very late point, they could just say like, "Oh, your only option is like adoption right now."
right. And even if it's something as crazy as late-term abortion, at least there are states for that. And damn it, if you got to take a plane to do that, that's on you, because you decided to make this decision to have a child out of wedlock. There should be ramifications for having a child out of wedlock that you want to terminate. Not saying that, you know, because I'm a woman and I appreciate having that ability if I want to. But let's keep going.
Afford to do it, and what you are putting her through is unconscionable. And the people of America have not, the majority of Americans believe in a woman's right to make decisions about her own body. And that is why in every state where this issue has been on the ballot, in red and blue states both, the people of America have voted for freedom.
Vice President Harris,
Excuse me, I
thank
have
you.
to respond. Another lie. It's another lie. I have been a leader on IVF, which is fertilization. The IVF, I have been a leader. In fact, when they got a very negative decision on IVF from the Alabama courts, I saw the people of Alabama and the legislature 2 days later voted it in. I've been a leader on it. They know that, and everybody else knows it. I have been a leader on fertilization, IVF. And the other thing, you should ask, will she allow abortion in the 8th month, 9th month, 7th month?
Good question.
Okay, would you do that?
She says, "Come
Why
on,"
don't you ask
but
her that question?
Why don't you
That's
answer the
problem.
question? Would you
because
veto?
under Roe v.
Answer
Wade,
the question. Would you veto?
you could do abortions in the 7th month, the 8th month, the 9th
That's
month,
not true.
and probably after birth. Just look at the former governor of Virginia. The governor of Virginia said, we put the baby aside and then we determine what we want to do with the baby.
President Trump, thank you.
We're going to turn now to immigration and border security. We know it's an issue that's important to Republicans, Democrats, voters across the board in this country. Vice President Harris, you were tasked by President Biden with getting to the root causes of migration from Central America. We know that illegal border crossings reached a record high in the Biden administration. This past June, President Biden imposed tough new asylum restrictions. We know the numbers since then have dropped significantly. But my question to you tonight is, why did the administration wait until 6 months before the election to act? And would you have done anything differently from President Biden on this?
So I'm the only person on this stage who has prosecuted transnational criminal organizations
she loves saying
for the
that.
trafficking of guns, drugs, and human beings. And let me say that the United States Congress, including some of the most conservative members of the United States Senate, came up with a border security bill which I supported. And that bill would have put 1,500 more border agents on the border to help those folks who are working there right now overtime, trying to do their job. It would have allowed us to stem the flow of fentanyl coming into the United States. I know there are so many families watching tonight who have been personally affected by the surge of fentanyl in our country. That bill would have put more resources to allow us to prosecute transnational criminal organizations for trafficking in guns, drugs, and human beings. But you know what happened to that bill? Donald Trump got on the phone, called up some folks in Congress and said, kill the bill. And you know why? Because he preferred to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And understand, this comes at a time where the people of our country actually need a leader who engages in solutions, who actually addresses the problems at hand. But what we have in the former president is someone who would prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And I'll tell you something, he's going to talk about immigration a lot tonight, even when it's not the subject that is being raised. And I'm going to actually do something really unusual, and I'm going to invite you to attend one of Donald Trump's rallies, because it's a really interesting thing to watch. You will see during the course of his rallies, he talks about fictional characters like Hannibal Lecter. He will talk about windmills cause cancer. And what you will also notice is that people start leaving his rallies early out of exhaustion and boredom. And I will tell you, the one thing you will not hear him talk about is you. You will not hear him.
You know what? This is another example of trying to test how dumb and submissive Americans are, because the only people who are going to be like, yeah, fuck Trump rally, she's right, he only talks about himself, are people who've only seen 1 minute sound bites. Because if you've seen any Trump rally, any of them, the entire time he's talking about how to improve the lives of Americans. Like, it's very clear that who he really cares about. And for her to say that people walk off in the end when, like, he amasses hundreds of thousands of people at his rally when Biden can barely get 20 people, no exaggeration, is actually crazy. Like, I don't know. Let me look up Trump rally 2024. I don't know. Let me just.
Me saying that is real sounded like I was saying that is real.
Bro, like, look at let's see, like, bro, the picture, it sucks because every time you see a picture of rallies, it never shows justice. You have to see, like, drone footage. Like, it's hundreds of thousands of people. But let's just keep watching.
Talk about your needs, your dreams, and your desires. And I'll tell you, I believe you deserve a president who actually puts you first. And I pledge to you that I will.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump, on that point, I want to get your response.
Well, I would like to respond.
Let me just ask, though, why did you try to kill that bill, and successfully so? That would have put thousands of additional agents in office.
Whole time, why are you terrible? Why do you do the things you do, and why are they bad? Instead of, like, giving him even allowing him to take his breath and like talk about some things that he wants to. It's always rebuttal, like.
And when he says something about Kamala and Kamala's defending herself, they're silent. And then the way she defends herself by like jabbing him.
Right.
Like they ask her a question about her, he's like, well, let's talk about what he's done. And they'll be like, thank you, Mr.
Right.
Vice President.
Let's keep going.
Officers on the board.
First, let me respond as to the
Please.
rallies. She said people start leaving. People don't go to her rallies. There's no reason to go. And the people that do go,
LOL,
she's
bro.
bussing them in and paying them to be there and then showing them in a different light. So she can't talk about that. People don't leave my rallies. We have the biggest rallies, the most incredible rallies in the history of politics. That's because people want to take their country back. Our country is being lost. We're a failing nation. And it happened 3.5 years ago. And what's going on here, you're going to end up in World War III, just to go into another subject. What they have done to our country by allowing these millions and millions of people to come into our country, and look at what's happening to the towns all over the United States. And a lot of towns don't want to talk. It's not going to be Aurora or Springfield. A lot of towns don't want to talk about it because they're so embarrassed by it. In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating.
Her facial reaction, like, this is absolutely batshit crazy.
They're eating.
Yeah, I thought this was fake, and I literally thought this was fake.
Wait, let's hear him finish the statement. Right. Let's hear him finish the statement because I want to talk about it.
By it. In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there. And this is what's happening in our country. And it's a shame. As far as rallies are concerned, as far as the reason they go is they like what I say. They want to bring our country back. They want to make America great again. It's a very simple phrase, make America great again. She's destroying this country. And if she becomes president, this country doesn't have a chance of success. Not only success.
Her face, bro. Wait.
She becomes president, this country doesn't have a chance of success.
She's like, this poor man.
Not only success, will end up being Venezuela on steroids.
I just want to clarify here. You bring up Springfield, Ohio, and ABC News did reach out to the city manager there. He told us there have been no credible reports of specific claims of pets being harmed, injured, or abused by individuals within the immigrant community.
Well, I've seen people on television.
Let me just say here, this is the
people on television say my dog was taken and used for food. So maybe he said that, and maybe that's a good thing to say for a city manager.
Right. I'm not taking this from television.
But the people on television saying their
manager.
Dog was eaten by the people that went there.
Again, the Springfield city manager says there's no evidence of that. Vice President Harris, I'll let you respond to the rest of what you.
This is like some of the first time where it's probably the 1,000th time where I realize like the media just really lies to us however they want us to think it's crazy. What you were saying and how you thought it was a bunch of like BS when you first heard it, basically. I remember when I was sitting watching this debate with my family, and when he said that, in my spirit, I kind of was like, because I felt bad because I knew the mass public were going to look at him like he's a lunatic with a tinfoil hat. But there's probably some fringe stories that he knew about that people just didn't know about, didn't care enough to look up, or, or it's been hidden from them. And I had an example, this TikTok video. Kathy and I, we watched this video that I'll link in the description, this YouTube video about this woman who was showing evidence and stories of, basically showing clips of people going to their city council and talking about how some of their pets have been mutilated, killed, and cooked in their community, specifically in Springfield, Ohio, as a recent Haitian population has been bused into that city. So I have a TikTok of a woman who experienced that.
This shit ain't no joke. It's not funny. I really do not feel fucking safe here, bro. Like, everyone on TikTok, on Facebook, making these jokes to get everything's fucking funny. Like, imagine you being homeless for a whole fucking year for no fucking reason. Like, what the fuck? This shit is not fun. This shit is not cool, bro. They really out here decapitating animals and y'all are making jokes out of it. Imagine if you went outside and you saw your dog's head decapitated on the fucking ground. Like, why are y'all thinking this shit's a joke? It's not a joke. I don't feel comfortable walking anywhere. Like, what the fuck? I should be able to feel safe in my own city. Everybody's fucking homeless out here. Ain't shit but fucking scary ass Haitians just lurking and creeping and shit. Y'all thinking this shit's not fucking funny. I keep making this shit up. It's not made up, bro. This shit is real life. This shit is really affecting me. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah, so I just wanted to play that because it's like that's not even the first TikTok I've seen of like somebody from Springfield basically visibly upset about their pet being mutilated. So her looking at him like you're an idiot shows two things. It shows that she's not afraid to bold-faced lie in front of the general population. Either it's that or she is so unaware of what is happening to our average Americans, and either one of those things are not good. But we can keep going.
You talk about extreme.
Talk about extreme. This is the lives of Americans. If I lived in Springfield, I'd be like, yo, what?
Why is she laughing? This is so serious. This is a serious debate.
And
I can't
that's
stand
why
her giggles.
that is why this is the first time she's laughed in the debate. Take note of that. In this serious ass situation, to really like soften it and make it seem like this is complete woo-ha. Like she's trying to make it seem it's laughable.
One of the
Ain't
reasons
shit
why
funny.
in this election, I actually have the endorsement of 200 Republicans who have formerly worked with President Bush, Mitt Romney, and John McCain, including the endorsement
By the way, what does that have to do with anything?
of former Vice President Dick Cheney and Congress member Liz Cheney. And if you want to really know the inside track on who the former president is, if he didn't make it clear already, just ask people who have worked with him. His former chief of staff, a four-star general, has said he has contempt for the Constitution of the United States. His former national security advisor has said he is dangerous and unfit. His former secretary of defense has said the nation, the republic, would never survive another Trump term.
Is this in print?
This is so crazy how like she's with these super personal jabs saying that people very close to him are basically calling him incompetent on all this stuff. When it's like he could have said 1,000 times in this debate, the entire country thought you were a fucking joke until like 2 days ago. Like he could have said throughout this debate, nobody took you seriously. World leaders laugh at you. He could have
He
name
will
dropped.
say that, actually.
True. He could have name dropped like she's kind of doing, but he's trying to keep it.
And when we listen to this kind of rhetoric, when the issues that affect the American
These are real
people are not
issues.
being addressed, I think the choice is clear in this election.
President Trump, I'll give you a quick minute to respond.
Yeah.
Here.
Thank you. Because when I hear that, see, I'm a different kind of a person. I
They
fired
told
most
him
of those
to be
people.
presidential. They advised him to be presidential. They advised him, do not attack her like how she's gonna do you, or do not attack her how you usually do. Be presidential, because
Yeah,
this
he's
is
been doing better because
important.
you can definitely tell this time around like he's done no name calling, which that in itself is enough.
This is serious, bro. This time is serious.
He's not fucking around.
So graciously, they did bad things or a bad job. I fired them. They never fired one person. They didn't fire anybody having to do with Afghanistan and the Taliban and the 13 people whose were just killed, viciously and violently killed. And I got to know the parents and the family. They didn't fire. They should have fired all those generals, all those top people, because that was one of the most incompetently handled situations anybody has ever seen. So when somebody does a bad job, I fire him. And you take a guy like Esper, he was no good, I fired him. So he writes a book. Another one writes a book. Because with me, they can write books. With nobody else can they? But they have done such a poor job, and they never fire anybody. Look at the economy. Look at the inflation. They didn't fire any of their economists. They have the same people. That's a good way not to have books written about you. But just to finish, I got more votes than any Republican in history by far. In fact, I got more votes than any president, sitting president in history by far.
Let me continue on immigration. It was what you wanted to talk about earlier, so let's get back to your deportation proposal that the vice president has reacted to as well. President Trump, you call this the largest domestic deportation operation in the history of our country. You say you would use the National Guard. You say if things get out of control, you'd have no problem using the U.S. military.
Police, yes.
You also said you would use local police. How would you deport 11 million undocumented immigrants? I know you believe that number is much higher. Take us through this. What does this look like? Will authorities be going door to door in this country?
Them in the first place.
It is much higher because of them. They allowed criminals, many millions of criminals. They allowed terrorists. They allowed common street criminals. They allowed people to come in, drug dealers, to come into our country. And they're now in the United States and told by their countries like Venezuela, don't ever come back or we're going to kill you. Do you know that crime in Venezuela and crime in countries all over the world is way down? You know why? Because they've taken their criminals off the street and they've given them to her to put into our country. And this will be one of the greatest mistakes in history for them to allow. And I think they probably did it because they think they're going to get votes, but it's not worth it because they're destroying the fabric of our country by what they've.
And just to elaborate on that for some people who don't really understand, like, the Democrats are pushing, for the past few years, have been pushing for paper ballots across the United States. And there have been reports of, in some states where people mostly do paper ballots, there have been reports of people getting multiple ballots mailed to them and filling out multiple ballots. So there have been reports of people filling out paper ballots with false information, and this is happening in a lot of blue states. There are some states where paper ballots are not legal. Like, for example, me living in Florida for a while, my perception of voting was warped because when I vote in Florida, you have to go to a physical location, you have to present your ID, you have to have you have to have multiple forms of ID. But in some states, all you need to do is mail in a ballot. So I was just bringing this up because there's a lot of people who have been speculating that the increased immigration population might have something, some of it might have to do with being able to fabricate votes and for the blue side because they give them, free benefits. And I just want to say this is not new to America because in the times of Tammany Hall, which most of us learned about in like history class when we had the big monopolies, he was getting immigrants fresh off the boat and basically throwing them into voting booths to vote for him and saying, I'll do this, that, and the third for you. And that's basically what Democrats are doing these days. So I just wanted to say that.
Done. There's never been anything done like this at all. They've destroyed the fabric of our country. Millions of people let in, and all over the world, crime is down. All over the world except here. Crime here is up and through the roof. Despite their fraudulent statements that they made, crime in this country is through the roof. And we have a new form of crime. It's called migrant crime. And it's happening at levels that nobody thought possible.
President Trump, as you know, the FBI says overall violent crime is actually coming down in this country. But
excuse me, the FBI they were defrauding statements. They didn't include the worst cities. They didn't include the cities with the worst crime. It was a fraud. Just like their number of 818,000 jobs that they said they created turned out to be a fraud.
Right,
Trump,
what jobs?
I'll let you respond, Vice President Harris.
Well, I think this is.
And that was another thing that they just completely bold-faced lied about. Like, hey, President Trump, oh, you're lying. The economy's actually better, even though we all know it's not. And I have some evidence I wanted to pull up for that. Oh my Lanta. Okay. Oh, LOL, it's so small. So, in this screenshot, and I'll link the tweet down, or I'll link both of these articles, but basically the CNN has reported that violent crime is down and the US murder rate is plunging, but also News Nation in that same time period in a similar time period has reported that cities nationwide are not reporting their crime data to the FBI. So Trump literally just said they're not reporting the major cities in America. And this has been reported. Like, oh yeah, crime rates are down. Well, shit, you're not reporting the crime rates from like Chicago, New York, and all these places. So of course, when you don't account those, the rates would be lower. You know what I mean? So these debaters are just like fact checking Trump and lying. And then they're just letting Kamala lie and provoke. It's a true example of the fabrication of our democracy and news media, bro.
So rich, coming from someone who has been prosecuted for national security crimes, economic crimes, election interference, has been found liable for sexual assault, and his next big court appearance is in November at his own criminal sentencing. And let's be clear, where each person stands on the issue of what is important about respect for the rule of law and respect for law enforcement. The former vice president called for defunding federal law enforcement, 45,000 agents, get this, on the day after he was arraigned on 34 felony counts. So let's talk about what is important in this race. It is important that we move forward, that we turn the page on this same old tired rhetoric and address the needs of the American people, address what we need to do about the housing shortage, which I have a plan for, address what we must do to support our small businesses, address bringing down the price of groceries. But frankly, the American people are exhausted with this same old tired playbook.
Vice President
I
Harris,
agree,
thank you.
Kamala.
Excuse me.
We are
Every
exhausted.
one of those cases was started by them against their political playbook. And I'm winning most of them, and I will win the rest on appeal. And you saw that with the decision that came down just recently from the Supreme Court. I'm winning most of them. But those are cases, it's called weaponization. Never happened in this country. They weaponized the Justice Department. Every one of those cases was involved with the DOJ, from Atlanta and Fani Willis to the Attorney General of New York and the DA in New York. Every one of those cases. And then they say, oh, he's a criminal. They're the ones that made them go after me. By the way, Joe Biden was found essentially guilty on the documents case. And what happened in my documents case? They said, oh, that's the toughest of them all. A complete and total victory. 2 months ago, it was thrown out. It's weaponization, and they used it, and it's never happened in this country.
It's a lot of these court cases definitely are weaponization, because most of them he's gotten off innocent, and the moment he's gotten off innocent, no report in the media. But the moment he's being on trial and all this stuff, it's like all over.
They used it to try and win an election. They're fake cases.
President Trump, thank you. A really quick response here, Vice President Harris, on this notion of weaponization of the Justice Department.
Well, let's talk about extreme and understand the context in which this election in 2024 is taking place. The United States Supreme Court recently ruled that the former president would essentially be immune from any misconduct if he were to enter the White House again. Understand, this is someone who has openly said he would terminate, I'm quoting, terminate the Constitution of the United States.
That is so crazy. Like, I can't even with this debate, bro. She's saying that, and I quote, he will terminate the Constitution. How dumb do you think we are? Like, how...
that he would weaponize the Department of Justice against his political enemies. Someone who has openly expressed disdain for members of our military. Understand what it would mean if Donald Trump were back in the White House with no guardrails. Because certainly we know now the court won't stop him. We know J.D. Vance is not going to stop him. It's up.
I just want to say that she says that he's openly expressed disdain for people in the military. Literally, the 13 families recently that had this big ass funeral in DC because uh basically
To the American people.
Vice
To
President
stop
Harris.
him.
Thank you. Lindsay?
Vice President Harris, in your last run for president.
This is the one that weaponized, not me. She weaponized. I probably took a bullet to the head because of the things that they say about me. They talk about democracy. I'm a threat to democracy. They're the threat to democracy with a
President
fake
Trump.
Russia investigation
We do have a lot to
that
get.
went nowhere.
We have a lot to get.
also a threat to democracy in the fact that we didn't even get to elect our presidential candidate for Democrat. Like, we literally didn't even get a say or a vote in who our presidential candidate is. That is a threat to democracy.
I noticed that she's mentioning a lot of things that I would hear during his first race, like some outrageous things.
You're so right.
He's going for those early stuff,
You're
that early
so right.
stuff.
She's holding on to that
He's
stuff.
like, guys, like, let's not forget.
Right, even though okay.
Lindsay?
Vice President Harris, in your last run for president, you said you wanted to ban fracking. Now you don't. You wanted mandatory government buyback programs for assault weapons. Now your campaign says you don't. You supported decriminalizing border crossings. Now you're taking a harder line. I know you say that your values have not changed. So then why have so many of your policy positions changed?
Right.
So changed, and I'm going to discuss every one of at least every point that you've made. But in particular, let's talk about fracking because we're here in Pennsylvania. I made that very clear in 2020. I will not ban fracking. I have not banned fracking as Vice President of the United States. And in fact, I was the tie-breaking vote on the Inflation Reduction Act, which opened new leases for fracking. My position is that we have got to invest in diverse sources of energy so we reduce our reliance on foreign oil. We have had the largest increase in domestic oil production in history because of an approach that recognizes that we cannot over-rely on foreign oil.
Wow.
As it relates to my values, let me tell you, I grew up
I just want to say Trump's whole campaign forever has been drill, baby, drill, and that has been about drilling American oil and not exporting or not importing oil from other countries, which the Biden administration has completely and utterly picked up. Like, they've been importing oil like crazy, even though we're a very oil-rich nation. Like,
raised by a hardworking mother. Values, let me tell you, I grew up a middle-class kid raised by a hardworking mother who worked and saved and was able to buy our first home when I was a teenager. The values I bring to the importance of home ownership, knowing not everybody got handed $400 million on a silver platter and then filed bankruptcy 6 times, is a value that I bring to my work to say we are going to work with the private.
It's crazy too because his famous clip is the small loan of $1 million, and she's saying the small loan of $400 million. Like, this whole debate, she has just been lying non-stop. It's honestly insane.
Sector and home builders to increase 3 million homes, increase by 3 million homes by the end of my first term. My work that is related to having a friend when I was in high school who was sexually assaulted by her stepfather. And my focus then on protecting women and children from violent crime is based on a value that is deeply grounded in the importance of standing up for those who are most vulnerable. My work that is about protecting Social Security and Medicare is based on long-standing work that I have done, protecting seniors from scams. My values have not changed. And what is important is that there is a president who actually brings values and a perspective that is about lifting people up and not beating people down and name calling. The true measure of the...
She's really banking on the audience. I can tell her target audience is people who don't research for themselves because her saying I've never changed on any of my policies assumes that the people that are listening to this aren't going to check that or aren't going to verify that or haven't already heard the thousands of people say she's been flip-flopping. Like,
leader is the leader who actually understands the strength is not in beating people down, it's in lifting people up. I intend to be that president.
President Trump, your
Well, first of
response?
all, I wasn't given $400 million. I wish I was. My father was a Brooklyn builder, Brooklyn, Queens, and a great father, and I learned a lot from him. But I was given a fraction of that, a tiny fraction, and I built it into many, many billions of dollars, many, many billions. And when people see it, they are even surprised. So we don't have to talk about that. Fracking, she's been against it for 12 years. Defund the police, she's been against that forever. She gave
I don't know about that one.
very wrongly, very horribly, and everybody's laughing at it, okay? They're all laughing at it. She gave up at least 12 and probably 14 or 15 different policies. Like, she was
right.
big on defund the police. In Minnesota, she went out, wait a minute, I'm talking now. If you don't mind, please. Does that sound familiar? She went out in Minnesota and wanted to let criminals that killed people, that burned down Minneapolis, she went out and raised money to get them out of jail. She did things that nobody would ever think of. Now she wants to do transgender operations on illegal aliens that are in prison. This is a radical left liberal that would do this.
We need to comment on this because this has been on social media a lot, this one line. Her being able to,
think of. Now she wants to do transgender operations on illegal aliens that are in prison. This is
so there's
I
actually
haven't heard anything about this. Like, when I heard this in the debate, I was very confused. Like,
when
what?
this is the second case in the debate where I heard something that he said and I had that feeling in my stomach that was like, damn, he's talking about another fringe news story that most Americans don't know and are gonna look at him like he's crazy. Even though I'm sure this is backed up by truth, this wouldn't just, where would this come from? You know what I'm saying? Like, how could you even form that idea? I mean, it does sound ridiculous, but it's not. Like, what he's speaking to is like detained immigrants who are in detention camps can transition in detention camps. That is allowed. It has happened. Let that sink in. So what he's saying is, though he's saying it in like kind of an extreme way, it's the truth.
a radical left liberal.
But on social media, they're flaming him up for that.
That would do this. She wants to confiscate your guns, and she will never allow fracking in Pennsylvania.
Again, these things sound extreme. She wants to confiscate your guns. She, I don't know if do I have it? Yeah. So this was an article in 2019, but during the DNC, the previous DNC, not this year, she had spoken about basically wanting mandatory buyback of assault weapons, which is like a big issue for the blue side. But basically, buybacks is like literally when the government buys your weapon back. So it's forcing people to give their weapons up for like, a stipend or whatever. Here you go. Here's a little $1,000, but you can't use this gun. You can't have it anymore. You're not allowed to have this type of weapon. Like, she's openly supported that. So when he's talking about taking away your guns, it's not woo-ha.
If she won the election, fracking in Pennsylvania will end on day one. Just to finish, one thing so important in my opinion. So I got the oil business going like nobody has ever done before. When they took over, they got rid of it, started getting rid of it, and the prices were going up the roof. They immediately let these guys go to where they were. I would have been 5 times, 4 times, 5 times higher, because you're talking about 3.5 years ago. They got it up to where I was because they had no choice, because the prices of energy were were quadrupling and doubling. You saw what happened to gasoline. So they said, let's go back
Right.
to Trump. But if she won the election, the day after that election, they'll go back to destroying our country, and oil will be dead, fossil fuel will be dead. We'll go back to windmills, and we'll go back to solar, where they need a whole desert to get some energy to come out. You ever see a solar plant? By the way, I'm a big fan of solar, but they take 400, 500 acres of desert
President
soil.
Trump, we have a
These
lot
are
of
not good
issues
things
that
for
we
the
have to get
environment.
to,
This year.
Which is a good point, because it's like, I'm all for like improving the environment, but these tactics or these other ways that they're trying to do it don't sound so efficient. Like him talking about, that's true, you need hundreds of miles for one solar farm. I'm sure you've seen them in Florida. You're driving down the highway, you're driving down, it's like miles
I
long.
have seen them, and I have also seen many a commercial and ad for solar panels.
Yeah, I mean that's a Florida thing. Don't worry, that's an ad you see if you live in Florida. I don't see those,
Why?
but it's because it's the Sunshine State. The thing is, it's not even that efficient, because what happens when it rains, you know? And then with wind power, what happened when it's not as windy? But also with wind power, he's been in some interviews talking about how when you go to an actual windmill and you look at the bottom of the propellers, he says many people say it's like a graveyard for birds. Like thousands of birds get killed through windmills.
Oh my
And
God.
like, what does that do for the environment?
Time. Thank you.
Lindsay, thank you. We have an election in just 56 days. And I want to talk about the peaceful transfer of power, which, of course, we all know is a cornerstone of our democracy, and the role of a president in a moment of crisis. Mr. President, on January 6th, you told your supporters to march to the Capitol. You said you would be right there with them. The country and the world saw what played out at the Capitol that day, the officers coming under attack. Aides in the West Wing say you watched it unfold on television off the Oval Office. You did send out tweets, but it was more than 2 hours before you sent out that video message telling your supporters to go home. Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day?
You just said a thing that isn't covered. Peacefully and patriotically, I said during my speech, not later on.
Right.
Peacefully and patriotically.
Big difference.
And nobody on the other side was killed. Ashley Babbitt was shot by an out-of-control police officer that should have never, ever shot her. It's a disgrace. But we didn't do this group of people that have been treated so badly. I ask, what about all the people that are pouring into our country and killing people that she allowed to pour in? She was the border czar, remember that. She was the border czar. She doesn't want to be called the border czar because she's embarrassed by the border. In fact, she said at the beginning, oh, I'm surprised you're not talking about the border yet. That's because she knows what a bad job they've done. What about those people? When are they going to be prosecuted? When are these people from countries all over the world, not just South America? They're coming in from all over the world, David, all over the world. And crime rates are down all over the world because of it.
But let me just
when
ask
are
you-
those, David, when are those people going to be prosecuted? When are the people that burned down Minneapolis going to be prosecuted? Or in Seattle? They went into Seattle. They took over a big percentage of the city of Seattle. When are those people going to be prosecuted?
But let me just ask
You might ask her that question.
You were the president. You were watching it unfold on television. It's a very simple question as we move forward toward another election. Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day? Yes or no?
I had nothing to do with that other than they asked me to make a speech. I showed up for a speech. I said, I think it's going to be big.
Mind you, they didn't ask Kamala, do you regret saying yes with Joe to starting the war in Palestine and Ukraine? Like,
I went to Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington, D.C., and the mayor put it back in writing, as you know. I said, this is going to be a very big rally or whatever you want to call it. And again, it wasn't done by me. It was done by others. I said, I'd like to give you 10,000 National Guard or soldiers. They rejected me. Nancy Pelosi rejected me. It was just 2 weeks ago. Her daughter has a tape of her saying she is fully responsible for what happened. They want to get rid of that tape. It would have never happened if Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington did their jobs. I wasn't responsible for security. Nancy Pelosi was responsible. She didn't do her job.
The question was about you as president.
that really shows you too how these people, like, that January 6th thing was damn near orchestrated, because he's saying, bro, My people are coming with some heat. You need a big ass troop. I got you. Let me help you guys because my people are coming with heat. I told them to do it peacefully, but it looks like they're coming with full force. Let me help you. And they're like, no, we don't want the security. Let's take on the force so we can report about it later and make you look like an asshole. Like, shit's crazy.
Not about former Speaker Pelosi, but I do want Vice President Harris to respond.
I was at the Capitol on January 6th. I was the vice president-elect. I was also an acting senator. I was there. And on that day, the President of the United States incited a violent mob to attack our nation's capital.
Like, what?
To desecrate our nation's capital. On that day, 140 law enforcement officers.
I honestly, it's just so hard to take because this is like the 80th time where, like, right after he's clearly said his stance, she said the exact opposite, trying to put words into his mouth.
This is exactly what I've heard about this, what she's saying.
Wow.
Were injured, and some died. And understand, the former president has been indicted and impeached for exactly that reason. But this is not an isolated situation. Let's remember Charlottesville, where there was a mob of people carrying tears.
The way he hasn't looked at her once.
Doing anti-Semitic hate.
That's a good point.
And what did the president then at the time say?
Wow.
They were fine.
And she goes back and forth from him to the moderators, to the camera.
When it came to the Proud Boys, a militia, the former president said, stand back and stand by. So for everyone watching who remembers what January 6th was, I say, we don't have to go back. Let's not go back. We're not going back. It's time to turn the page. And if that was a bridge too far for you, well, there is a place in our campaign for you to stand for country, to stand for our democracy, to stand for rule of law, and to end the chaos, and to end the approach that is about attacking the foundations of our democracy because you don't like the outcome. And be clear on that point. Donald Trump, the candidate, has said in this election there will be a bloodbath if this and the outcome of this election is not to his liking. Let's turn the page on this. Let's not go back. Let's chart a course for the future and not go backwards to the past.
Let me just follow up here.
There's facial expressions.
A term that related to energy because they have destroyed our energy business. That was where bloodbath was. Also, on Charlottesville, that story has been, as you would say, debunked. Laura Ingraham, Sean Hannity, Jesse, all of these people, they covered it. If they go an extra sentence, they will see it was perfect. It was debunked in almost every newspaper, but they still bring it up, just like they bring 2025 up. They bring all of this stuff up. I ask you this, you talk about the Capitol. Why are we allowing these millions of people to come through on the southern border? How come she's not doing anything? And I'll tell you what I would do, and I would be very proud to do it. I would say we would both leave this debate right now. I'd like to see her go down to Washington, D.C. during this debate because we're wasting a lot of time. Go down to, because she's been so bad, it's so ridiculous. Go down to Washington, D.C. and let her sign a bill to close up the border because they have the right to do it. They don't need bills. They have the right to do it. The president of the United States, you'll get him out of bed. You'll wake him up at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. You'll say, come on down to the office. Let's sign a bill. If he signs a bill that the border is closed, all he has to do is say it to the Border Patrol, who are phenomenal. If they do that, the border is closed. Those people are killing many people, unlike J6.
Right, because what the average American doesn't understand is that there are people at the border who are patrol agents right now literally on standby waiting to detain people, but they have gotten executive orders to let these people through. That's what people are not understanding. It's not just like, oh, we have an immigration system at the border, everybody comes through and just more people are being let in than usual. No, like there are gaping holes where people can cross through, where there used to be patrol agents patrolling those areas, and they are no longer patrolling those areas. So there are literally areas for people to go through, and furthermore, there are multiple areas that people can cross the border and go straight into a facility to seek asylum. Like, this is not your average immigration stuff.
We talked immigration here tonight. I do want to focus on this next issue to both of you because it really brings us this into focus, truth in these times that we're living in. Mr. President, for 3.5 years after you lost the 2020 election, you repeatedly falsely claimed that you won, many times saying you won in a landslide. In the past couple of weeks leading up to this debate, you have said, quote, you lost by a whisker, that you, quote, didn't quite make it, that you came up a little bit short. Are you now acknowledging that you lost in 2020?
No, I don't acknowledge that at all.
But
I
you
said
did
that
say
sarcastically.
But
You know
those-
that. It was said, oh, we lost by a whisker. That was said sarcastically. Look, there's so much proof. All you have to do is look at it. And they should have sent it back to the legislatures for approval. I got almost 75 million votes, the most votes any sitting president has ever gotten. I was told if I got 63, which was what I got in 2016, you can't be beaten. The election, people should never be thinking about an election as fraudulent. We need two things. We need walls, and we have to have it. We have to have borders, and we have to have good elections. Our elections are bad. And a lot of these illegal immigrants coming in, they're trying to get them to vote. They can't even speak English. They don't even know what country they're in practically. And these people are trying to get them to vote. And that's why they're allowing them to come into our country.
I did watch all of these pieces of video. I didn't detect the sarcasm, lost by a whisker. We didn't quite make
Voter
it.
fraud.
We should just point out here as clarification, and you know this.
What'd you say?
He's suggesting voting fraud right now.
Literally. I mean, it's an issue in our country in the recent years. Like,
You and
it's
your
getting
allies,
worse.
60 cases in front of many judges, many of them
No judge
Republican,
looked at it.
and said there
They
was
said
no
we didn't have
widespread
standing.
fraud.
That's the other thing. They said we didn't have standing, a technicality. Can you imagine a system where a person in an election doesn't have standing? The president of the United States doesn't have standing. That's how we lost. If you look at the facts, and I'd love to have you'll do a special on it. I'll show you Georgia, and I'll show you Wisconsin, and I'll show you Pennsylvania, and I'll show you. We have so many facts and statistics, but you know what? That doesn't matter. Because we have to solve the problem that we have right now. That's old news.
Right.
And the problem that we have right now is we have a nation in decline.
Right.
And they have put it into decline.
Like, let's focus
we have a
here.
nation that is dying, David.
Mr. President, thank you. Vice President Harris, you heard the president there tonight. He said he didn't say that he lost by a whisker. So he still believes he did not lose the election that was won by President Biden and yourself. But I do want to ask you about something that's come up in the last couple of days. This was a post from President Trump about this upcoming election just weeks away. He said, when I win, those people who cheated, and then he lists donors, voters, election officials, he says will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, which will include long-term prison sentences. One of your campaign's top lawyers responded saying, we won't let Donald Trump intimidate us. We won't let him suppress the vote. Is that what you believe he's trying to do here?
Wow.
Donald Trump was fired by 81 million people. So let's be clear about that.
Wow.
And clearly
Girl,
he is having a very difficult time processing.
she's cocky for someone who never got a single vote. Cocky as hell.
But we cannot afford to have a president of the United States who attempts, as he did in the past, to upend the will of the voters in a free and fair election. And I'm going to
He's
tell
not
you,
answering the question.
I have
Right.
traveled the world as vice president of the United States, and world leaders are laughing at Donald Trump.
Which
I have
is
talked with
hilarious because he had some of the best relationships with most of the world leaders and all over international news sources. They are literally laughing at Kamala. At least before they were laughing at her incompetency.
Terry
Like,
leaders,
like
some
what?
of whom work with you, and they say you're a disgrace.
So personal.
And when you then talk in this way in a presidential debate,
You're disgraced directly at him.
Right, like she's saying people who work personally with you. say you're a disgrace, man. Like what? Totally
Again, our
uncalled
court
for.
cases you have lost because you did, in fact, lose that election. It leads one to believe that perhaps we do not have in the candidate to my right the temperament or the ability to not be confused about fact. That's deeply troubling, and the American people deserve better.
Her
Let
intonation,
me just say about world
Right.
leaders. Viktor Orban, one
her
of the
tone.
most respected men. They call him a strong man. He's a tough person, smart. Prime Minister of Hungary. They said, why is the whole world blowing up? 3 years ago, it wasn't. Why is it blowing up? He said, because you need Trump back as president. They were afraid of him. China was afraid, and I don't like to use the word afraid, but I'm just quoting him. China was afraid of him. North Korea was afraid of him. Look at what's going on with North Korea, by the way. He said Russia was afraid of him. I ended the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, and Biden put it back on day one, but he ended the XL pipeline. The XL pipeline in our country, he ended that. But he let the Russians build a pipeline going all over Europe and heading into Germany, the biggest pipeline in the world. Look, Viktor Orban said it. He said the most respected, most feared person is Donald Trump. We had no problems when Trump was president. But when this weak, pathetic man that you saw at a debate just a few months ago, that if he weren't in that debate, he'd be running instead of her. She got no votes. He got 14 million votes. What you did, you talk about a threat to democracy. He got 14 million votes and they threw him out of office.
Right,
and you know what? I'll give you a
bro.
little secret. He hates her. He can't stand her. But
Mr.
he got
President.
14 million votes. They threw him out. She got 0 votes. And when she ran, she was the first one to leave because she failed. And now she's running. I don't understand it, but
Mr.
I'm
President,
okay with it
Mr.
because
President, your time
I
is up.
think we're
Thank
going to
you.
do very well.
We've got a lot more to get to.
Turning now
Yes.
to the
Like,
Israel-Hamas war.
really quick. Dang, I forgot what I was gonna say, actually. Just play it, it'll come back to me.
Hostages who are still being held American.
I can put it back
I don't
on.
understand it, but
Mr.
I'm okay
President.
with it because leave because she failed. And now she's running. I don't
Right. Okay. So I would understand the situation of her replacing him as the runner with no votes or anything if they had deemed Biden like unfit for presidency and she was the new president. Like, am I
Right,
missing
she had
something? Is
stepped up
she
as
president right now?
which
That would
might
be different. You
which
know?
which might I add, if you remember correctly, after President Trump won the 2016 election and he was sitting president, he still had to debate against all those people and still fight to be the Republican nominee. Well, I mean, the Republicans basically gave it to him. I'm not gonna lie. The Republicans basically gave it to him. But at least there were some debates. You didn't see any debates between Democratic candidates. None. So it's like, bro, what?
with it
Mr.
because
President, your time is up.
And that was when he was literally sitting president. He still had to go through the process.
I think we're
Thank
going to
you.
do very well.
We've got a lot more to get to.
Turning now
Yes.
to the Israel-Hamas war and the hostages who are still being held, Americans among them. Vice President Harris, in December, you said, quote, Israel has a right to defend itself, but you added, quote, it matters how, saying international humanitarian law must be respected. Israel must do more to protect innocent civilians. You said that 9 months ago. Now an estimated 40,000 Palestinians
Oh
are
my gosh, that's so funny. They put her camera on the left.
Maine. Just last week, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said there's not a deal in the making. President Biden has not been able to break through the stalemate. How would you do it?
Well, let's understand how we got here. On October 7, Hamas, a terrorist organization, slaughtered 1,200 Israelis, many of them young people who were simply attending a concert. Women were horribly raped. And so, absolutely, I said then, I say now, Israel has a right to defend itself. We would. And how it
Com-
does so.
Completely omitting the fact that Hamas was defending themselves against Israel. Okay.
matters, because it is also true far too many innocent Palestinians have been killed. Children, mothers. What we know is that this war must end. It must end immediately, and the way it will end is
It must win and
Right.
immediately.
we need a ceasefire deal and we need the hostages out. And so we will continue to work around the clock on that. Work around the clock, also understanding that
Which is like, why haven't you guys been working around the clock with the ceasefire deal? This is the first time she's ever said the word ceasefire from what I could hear.
we must chart a course for a two-state solution. And in that solution, there must be
Solution?
security for the Israeli people and Israel, and in equal measure for the Palestinians. But the one thing I will assure you always, I will always give Israel the ability to defend itself, in particular as it relates to Iran and any threat that Iran and its proxies pose to Israel. But we must have a two-state solution where we can rebuild Gaza, where the Palestinians have security, self-determination, and the dignity they so rightly deserve.
Before we rebuild
President Trump, how would
before we rebuild Gaza, we have to stop the bombings from happening. Like, they're still going
They want
on.
to rebuild Gaza and Israel's image for Israel. They're about to make the remaining Palestinians like I don't even want to say second class citizens, because I feel like it's going to be worse than that. They're doing this to rebuild with Israeli infrastructure.
That's so sad, bro. Dude, literally, there's so much that could be said about this, because with this war, not only are they, like you said, rebuilding Israel, so they're making Palestine Israel, what they always wanted to do, but they're also destroying ancient relics and ancient evidence of our ancient past, which is what every war does, which goes into our theme of Tartaria and talking about how they're trying to rewrite history in real time by destroying.
That really explains why they're going so hard on.
You have to speak up. I can't hear you.
Ripping like every.
Hey, I can't hear you. You have to speak up.
I said that really explains why they're going so hard to really strip the land of all the buildings, like
Right.
everything. Like, it looks like they're really just clearing it out. Like, there's nothing standing. Everything is rubble. From all the pictures and footage that I've seen, everything is rubble.
So the
There's
next
not
generation.
one building half up. Like, it looks like
Right.
controlled demolition.
So the future generations, what they see as Palestine and Israel will be the constructed reality of the people at the top. A recent constructed reality. But let's
I
continue.
wonder how this is going to pan out, maybe even like 50 plus years from now, in the way that we look at like several fires of different cities, like the Chicago fires, or
No, seriously.
insert city name fire that cleared out like a whole city, and the pictures and drawings
Right.
look all like very close to what Gaza and a lot of these Palestinian areas look like, completely stripped.
Exactly.
All the buildings rubble, barely one or two standing halfway.
Right. So yeah, let's keep going. But I agree.
negotiate with Netanyahu and also Hamas in order to get the hostages out and prevent the killing of more innocent civilians in Gaza?
If I were president, it would have never started. If I were president, Russia would have never, ever, I know Putin very well, he would have never, and there was no threat of it either, by the way, for 4 years, have gone into Ukraine and killed millions of people when you add it up, far worse than people understand what's going on over there. But when she mentions about Israel, all of a sudden, she hates Israel. She wouldn't even meet with Netanyahu when he went to Congress to make a very important speech. She refused to be there because she was at a sorority party of hers. She wanted to go to the sorority party. She hates Israel.
Sounds like
if she's
Joe.
president, I believe that Israel will not exist within 2 years from now. And I've been pretty good at predictions, and I hope I'm wrong about that one. She hates Israel. At the same time, in her own way, she hates the Arab population because the whole place is going to get blown up. Arabs, Jewish people, Israel will be gone. It would have never happened. Iran was broke under Donald Trump. Now Iran has $300 billion because they took off all the sanctions that I had. Iran
Right,
had
that's
no
fishy.
money for Hamas or Hezbollah or any of the 28 different spheres of terror. And they are spheres of terror, horrible terror. They had no money. It was a big story, and you know it. You covered it very well, actually. They had no money for terror. They were broke. Now they're a rich nation. And now what they're doing is they're spreading that money around. Look at what's happening with the Houthis and Yemen. Look at what's going on in the Middle East. This would have never happened. I will get that settled and fast, and I'll get the war with Ukraine and Russia ended. If I'm president-elect, I'll get it done before even becoming president.
Vice President.
I love that with our channel we can kind of speak to truth and we're not seen as tin hatters, because it's very true that they have been funding Iran recently. And speaking to conspiracy theory, quote unquote, we know that, like, quote unquote, they who run the world are pretty destructive people who kind of are playing chess with us as the pieces, so to say. And I'm just saying that because it's like them funding Iran is inherently funding, I'll put it this way. All across the world, the US has basically assassinated leaders and put other leaders in power, leaders that they're paying so that they can be their yes men, basically. And the same thing is happening in Iran and these places where there are more terrorists, quote unquote. The reason why these quote unquote terrorists are able to be more prolific now than they ever have been is because they're getting funded by the US on some malicious shit, on some, we're going to give these people money so we can take whatever resources we want from this country, and also destroy the history of this country, and just a lot more destruction. The military industrial complex, that's big money. And it's like they are funding these terrorist organizations. They were not rich before. I just wanted to say that.
President Harris, he says you hate Israel.
That's absolutely not true. I have my entire career and life supported Israel and the Israeli people. He knows that. He's trying to, again, divide and distract from the reality, which is, it is very well known that Donald Trump is weak and wrong on national security and foreign policy.
Like,
it is well known that he admires dictators, wants to be a dictator on day one, according to himself. It is well known that he said of Putin that he can do whatever the hell he wants and go into Ukraine. It is well known that he said when Russia went into Ukraine, it was brilliant. It is well known he exchanged love letters with Kim Jong-un. And it is absolutely well known that these dictators and autocrats are rooting for you to be president again because they're so clear. They can manipulate you with flattery and favors. And that is why
So crazy.
so many military leaders who you have worked with have told me you are a disgrace. That is why we understand
gets
that
so
we
low.
have to have a president who is not consistently weak and wrong on
Vice
national
President
security,
Harris.
including the importance of upholding and respecting and
What'd you say?
This is around the second time. This is like the second time she said weak and wrong. He's weak and wrong.
Dude, she's on a roll, bro.
Disregard our military.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
And she's the one that caused it. That's weak on national security by allowing every nation last month for the year, 168 different countries sending people into our country. Their crime rates are way down. Putin endorsed her last week, said, I hope she wins. And I think he meant it, because what he's gotten away with is absolutely incredible. It wouldn't have happened with me.
Right, it's true.
The
Wouldn't
leaders
have.
of other countries think that they're weak and incompetent, and they
And that's the thing, that she keeps trying to make it seem like leaders are condemning him and saying atrocious things about him, but I don't know about you. I've been watching different news networks from international sources, all different countries, and a lot of them criticize the incompetence of the Biden administration.
are. They're grossly incompetent. And I just ask one question. Why does Biden go in and kill the Keystone Pipeline and approve the single biggest deal that Russia's ever made, Nord Stream 2, the biggest pipeline anywhere in the world going to Germany and all over Europe? Because they're weak and they're ineffective. And Biden, by the way,
President
gets paid
Trump,
a lot of money.
Thank you. We have a lot of issues to get to.
We'll be right back with much more of this historic ABC News presidential debate from the National Constitution Center right here in Philadelphia. Back in a moment.
Is there anything you want to chime in with before we get to the next segment?
I want to know more about these pipelines that he's talking about.
Me too. We're gonna have to dissect more into that. I don't want to waste too much time on that, but I want to know a lot more about that too. I encourage the others to look into that. I'm just gonna skip forward to it.
Lindsay Davis. Welcome back to this historic ABC News presidential debate tonight. We're going to continue here, and I want to turn to the war in Ukraine. We're now 2.5 years into this conflict. Mr. President, it has been the position of the Biden administration that we must defend Ukraine from Russia, from Vladimir Putin, to defend their sovereignty, their democracy, that it's in America's best interest to do so, arguing that if Putin wins, he may be emboldened to move even further into other countries. You have said you would solve this war in 24 hours. You said so just before the break tonight. How exactly would you do that? And I want to ask you a very simple question tonight. Do you want Ukraine to win this war?
I want the war to stop. I want to save lives that are being uselessly, people being killed by the millions. It's the millions. It's so much worse than the numbers that you're getting, which are fake numbers.
Real.
Look, we're in for 250 billion or more because they don't ask Europe, which is a much bigger beneficiary to getting this thing done than we are. They're in for $150 billion less because Biden and you don't have the courage to ask Europe like I did with NATO. They paid billions and billions, hundreds of billions of dollars when I said, either you pay up or we're not going to protect you anymore. So that's maybe one of the reasons they don't like me as much as they like weak people. But you take a look at what's happening. We're in for 250 to 275 billion. They're into 100 to 150. They should be forced to equalize. With that being said, I want to get the war settled. I know Zelensky very well, and I know Putin very well. I have a good relationship, and they respect your president, okay? They respect me. They don't respect Biden. How would you respect him? Why? For what reason? He hasn't even made a phone call in 2 years to Putin, hasn't spoken to anybody.
I'm so glad that we have this podcast so we can be able to talk about these moments and really dissect them, because did you get to see the interview with Putin and Tucker Carlson?
Then
Very good interview, and just understanding that everybody's a human being. But anyway, I wanted to bring that up because in that interview, there was a segment I never forgot where Putin talked about how President Biden had never called him since he became president, and Putin's administration had reached out to him and reached out to his office, but they didn't get him. They got someone else who said they'd pass the message along, and basically he never got to speak to him. So we're almost at the next election, and Putin and Joe Biden have never had a conversation. I want that to really sink in for people. The president of the United States had never gone on the phone and had a conversation with the president of a big country such as Russia. And it's like, well, shit, neither did Kamala, you know? And President Trump obviously was seen in public and was recorded in many conversations with all of these various leaders. Leaders that would be seen as tyrannical and leaders that would be seen as very democratic, all across the board. But Biden, their administration, didn't even reach out. And I just wanted to say during this interview with Tucker Carlson, Putin kind of sounded a little hurt when he talked about that. And I just wanted to bring that up because Kamala's making it seem like Trump has a terrible relationship with these dictators when they haven't even picked up and answered a call. Like, how does that feel, you know?
They don't even try and get.
What'd you say?
I wonder why he's not making public appearances.
Right, I mean, he can barely form a sentence. Kamala, this is new for her.
That is a war that's dying to be settled. I will get it settled before I even become president. If I win, when I'm president-elect, and what I'll do is I'll speak to one, I'll speak to the other, I'll get them together. That war would have never happened. And in fact, when I saw Putin after I left, unfortunately left because our country has gone to hell. But after I left, when I saw him building up soldiers, he did it after I left. I said, oh, he must be negotiating. It must be a good, strong point of negotiation. Well, it wasn't, because Biden had no idea how to talk to him. He had no idea how to stop it. And now you have millions of people dead, and it's only getting worse, and it could lead to World War III. Don't kid yourself, David. We're playing with World War III, and we have a president that we don't even know if he's. Where is our president?
Where's our
We
president?
don't even know if he's a president.
And just to clarify
they
here,
threw him out of a campaign like a dog. We don't even know. Is he our president? But we have a president.
Mr. President.
And it's like, there are some people who's really making it seem like Donald Trump, like during this debate, is just like a dumbass. Bro is like speaking like a real president. Or a president, sorry. A real person. Like, where the fuck is our president? This is stuff that, the things that that he keeps talking about is stuff that all of us have been talking about. But she's like, I don't know. It's jarring.
She's talking about the exaggerations.
Can you speak louder?
She's talking about the exaggerations. She's talking about the sensational news stories.
Yeah.
She's talking about
Yeah.
the
Right.
sensational news stories and social media headlines.
Right.
The ones that everybody has heard.
It's honestly so crazy to see the body language difference too, because he's chill during most of this debate, but he'll have some moments where you can feel the passion. You can feel the frustration in what America has become. And she's so lax about all of this when this is a very fucked up time in our country. Not fucked up, but like, there's a lot going wrong in our country, and she's almost too calm about it. And there's some moments where you can tell he's like, dude, what is going on? We need to fix this. And she's in the corner like, there he goes again.
Like laughing and like literally holding laughs in, holding smiles in, smirking.
When I was watching this,
eyes.
When I was watching this with my parents, or my stepmom made a joke that they probably had her on some like tranquilizers because she's like not laughing and calmed down more. But anyways, let's keep going.
That's so funny. That's so funny that she said that.
Yeah.
That doesn't know he's alive.
Your time is up.
Bruh.
Just to clarify
They
here.
threw him out of a campaign like a dog.
And we're
We don't
just
even
not going
know.
to talk about
Is he our
this?
president? But we have a president,
Mr. President.
that doesn't know he's alive.
Your time is up. Just to clarify.
Good point. He has like Alzheimer's.
Do
You see
believe
where
it's-
they cut him off?
Right.
A president that doesn't know he's alive. Your time is up.
Right. And then they're not
Time is
gonna
up. You're talking too much.
and then they're not gonna inquire
What do you
about
mean
that.
that he doesn't know he's alive? Why isn't he making public appearances? why is this debate without an audience? Why was
Right.
his
What the?
and your debate without an audience
Okay,
for
let's
the
unpack.
first time or whatever?
Let's unpack for a moment because they have been drilling Trump relentlessly, but a question as simple as where the fuck is Joe Biden? They couldn't even ask her.
Like he's not even like around the building to like support her, watch this.
And
Because
even in this,
afterwards, he's nowhere to be seen.
right, like, dude, no, I'm pretty sure he's dead and cloned. But I mean, he literally told the moderators, ask her, where the fuck is Joe? It was a different point in this debate, but he literally told them to. They didn't do that. And again, to your point, where's the audience? My whole entire childhood watching, I don't know, CNN or whatever with my mom watching debates, there was always an audience. And
Like
this
this is
year, all of a sudden,
different.
there's none. This shit is like, our reality is getting more and more programmed. It's nuts. Like, people
You
couldn't
see
even.
this set design right now? They look like they're in a virtual meeting room.
This is like if you watch this frame right here is like if you watch a 90s movie,
Yes, bro. That brand what was it? Like THC?
like a 90s movie that's almost sci-fi,
Mm, I don't
but
know if I was thinking of the intro to a DVD when you said that. You know,
real, real. Let's keep going.
The U.S. best interest for Ukraine to win this war, yes or no?
I think it's the U.S. best interest to get this war finished and just get it done.
Right, he already answered the question and he's trying to double back, bro.
Right.
Negotiate a deal because we have to stop all of these human lives from being destroyed.
I want to take this to Vice President Harris. I want to
Amazing
get your
point.
thoughts on
Facts.
support for Ukraine in this moment, but also as Commander in Chief, if elected, how would you deal with Vladimir Putin, and would it be any different from what we're seeing from President Biden?
By the way, he just asked him about the Ukraine situation and what his stance on it. Who do you think you want to win? Who do you want to win for Ukraine? And then he just asked Kamala a completely different question. What the fuck? He just throws her a softball asking him, "Who do you support?"
Well, first of all, it's important to remind the former president you're not running against Joe Biden, you're running against me.
She thought she
I
ate with that
believe the
one.
reason that Donald Trump says that this war would be over within 24 hours is because he would just give it up. And that's not who we are as Americans. Let's understand what happened here. I actually met with Zelensky a few days before Russia invaded, tried through force to change territorial boundaries, to defy one of the most important international rules and norms, which is the importance of sovereignty and territorial integrity. And I met with President Zelensky. I shared with him American intelligence about how he could defend himself. Days later, I went to NATO's eastern flank, to Poland and Romania.
President Zelensky is of Ukraine.
Yeah, he's Ukraine. And I just wanted to say it's funny that a few days after she spoke with Zelensky, that's when the whole thing started. That's when it unfolded. I just feel like that's
He's
interesting.
gonna mention that. But it's just interesting to me that she says she met with him, but not with Putin, the other side of this.
Kathy, they have never
this-
even talked to him.
Like, so it's like, is she essentially saying she's on Ukraine's side? Like,
Gee, I wonder whose
why
side
not
she's
be?
on. Kathy, let's not
Well,
or
what's up? No neutrality? Like, I'm surprised there's
you
not
know,
even a
the
semblance of neutrality here.
the thing is, in this debate, she's been really good at telling us what we want to hear, but let's not forget that Ukraine has gotten hundreds of billions of dollars from the United States since this started during the Biden administration. They have gotten hundreds of billions. So I don't think there's a question of what side they're on. You know what I mean?
I know, but I'm mentioning this because of their hard question of Trump to Trump about, what side are you on? So for them to make that question a strong question, it has to be a question.
I feel like they were trying to get a really polarizing statement from Trump, but he answered that perfectly. He answered it how all of us are speaking about it. Fuck the sides. We just want the war to end. We just want the destruction to end. I don't care about, it's not about winning right now. Like, I'm not even thinking about who the victor would be. I'm just thinking about, I want this to be done. And whatever has to be done, and that's what he's saying. Like, who cares about who we're rooting for? What about the millions of lives that are dead for no reason? Like, at the end of the day, two countries can come together and negotiate. You get this, I get this. You back down from this, I back down from this. That's always how things end, a negotiation. That's all it takes. Okay, let's keep going. I'm getting fired up.
And through the work that I and others did, we brought 50 countries together to support Ukraine in its righteous defense.
I just want to see, I'm sorry that I keep pausing. I'm so sorry. I just want to say the dichotomy, because he said that he was speaking to, like, or I don't know. It's just 52 countries is not that many countries out of 168.
And because of our support, because of the air defense, the ammunition, the artillery, the javelins, the Abrams tanks that we have provided, Ukraine stands as an independent and free country. If Donald Trump were president, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv right now. And understand what that would mean, because Putin's agenda is not just about Ukraine. Understand why the European allies and our NATO allies are so thankful that you are no longer president, and that we...
Why is the U.S. involved? What does the U.S. have to do with Ukraine? What is Ukraine doing for the U.S.?
That's a $1 million question.
Like, what? Why are we over? What is Ukraine doing for the U.S. actually?
That's a whole episode in itself.
Because there must be some gain. There must be some
this.
bigger monetary gain that they're getting from the monetary investment.
I'll put it like this. It all goes back to the money, but even putting the money aside, my spirit is really leaning to the fact that America loves appointing leaders that they control in every country they can. Like, countries in South America, countries in Africa, countries in Europe, they literally, in the less developed countries, they will assassinate the leader, replace him. But in the more developed countries, they will, like, assassinate someone's character until someone else is picked. But in that case of Ukraine, like...
So I did a quick Google search. What does Ukraine do for the U.S.?
Gotta speak up.
And from U.S. Department of State, state.gov website, the first thing I see is, and I quote, Ukraine is a key regional strategic partner.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized Ukraine literally borders Russia. If the
Yes.
U.S. has
It was
Ukraine,
it was a part of Russia before.
right?
And that's what Putin talks about in the interview. Plus, Ukraine is one of the most oil-rich countries in Europe.
Bro.
So, there you go. That in itself. But let's keep going.
Understand the importance of the greatest military alliance the world has ever known, which is NATO, and what we have done to preserve the ability of Zelensky and the Ukrainians to fight for their independence. Otherwise, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv with his eyes on the rest of Europe, starting with Poland. And why don't you tell the 800,000 Polish Americans right here in Pennsylvania how quickly you would give up for the sake of favor and what you think is a friendship with what is known to be a dictator who would eat you for lunch.
Wow.
Vice President Harris, thank you. We've heard from both of you on Ukraine tonight. Afghanistan came up in the last hour. I wanted her to respond to something you said earlier, and I'll give you a minute here.
Yeah, he deserves to respond to that.
Putin would be sitting in Moscow, and he wouldn't have lost 300,000 men and women, but he would have been sitting in Moscow, quiet, please. He would have been sitting in Moscow much happier than he is right now. But eventually, he's got a thing that other people don't have. He's got nuclear weapons. They don't ever talk about that. He's got nuclear weapons. Nobody ever thinks about that. And eventually, maybe he'll use them, and maybe he hasn't been that threatening. But he does have that, something we don't even like to talk about. Nobody likes to talk about it. But just so you understand, they sent her to negotiate peace before this war started. 3 days later, he went in and he started the war because everything they said was weak and stupid. They said the wrong things. That war should have never started. She was the emissary. They sent her in to negotiate with Zelensky and Putin, and she did. And the war started 3 days later. And that's the...
That is crazy. She was sent in as the emissary, and the war happened 3 days later. I mean,
She said
bro.
the right things to the Ukrainian.
Oh,
She said the right thing. She said a strong thing.
The thing is, that's gonna fly over so many people's head because of how fast he said that. But dude, she's about to be our president. She's about to be the main person doing that. If Biden was in his right mind, he would have done that, but that was her, and she's gonna be our president, bro. Okay.
kind of talent we have.
Well, I rebuke that, but
I feel
with her.
like
She's worse.
President already.
yeah, I mean,
They really did replace Joe Biden.
yeah, they did. They definitely did.
He's just
No
there
doubt.
as
He
a
has
picture, but,
dementia.
like, she's been behind the scenes for a minute. They've been training her for a minute.
Yes, he has dementia. They just can't let the American population crumble like that right now. They're trying to hold on, but
Than Biden. In my opinion, I think he's the worst president in the history of our country. She goes down as the worst vice president in the history of our country. But let me tell you something. She is a horrible negotiator. They sent her in to negotiate. As soon as they left, Putin did the invasion.
President Trump, thank you. You did bring up something. You said she went to
That's a good
negotiate
point.
with Vladimir Putin. Vice President
And
Harris,
she
have you
wants to
ever met
negotiate
Vladimir
what
Putin?
She
Yeah.
wanted to negotiate, which was war with Russia.
right.
Can you clarify tonight?
Partnership.
Yet again, I said at the beginning of this debate, you're going to hear a bunch of lies coming from this fellow. And that is another one. When
Like,
I went
what?
to meet with President Zelensky, I've now met with him over 5 times. The reality is, it has been about standing as America always should, as a leader upholding international rules and norms, as a leader who shows strength, understanding that the alliances we have around the world are dependent on our ability to look out for our friends and not favor our enemies because you adore strongmen instead of caring about democracy. And that is very much what is at stake here. The President of the United States is commander in chief, and the American people have a right to rely on a president who understands the significance of America's role and responsibility in terms of ensuring that there is stability and ensuring we stand up for our principles and not sell them for.
So how is this ensuring that we have stability, going to war and giving away billions of dollars? How does that ensure stability in any way? I want to know.
For the benefit of personal flattery.
You talked about Ukraine and Vladimir Putin. I do want to talk about Afghanistan. It came up in the first hour of this debate. I want to move on to Afghanistan.
Said Trump did the most amazing thing I've ever seen. He got these countries, the 28 countries at the time, to pay up. He said, I've never seen, he's the head of NATO. He said, I've never seen. For years, we were paying almost all of NATO. We were being ripped off by European nations, both on trade and on NATO. I got them to pay up by saying one of the statements you made before, if you don't pay, we're not going to protect you.
President
Otherwise,
Trump.
we would have never gotten it. He said it was one of the most incredible jobs that he's ever seen done.
Thank you. I want to turn to Afghanistan. It came up in the first hour of the debate, and we witnessed a poignant moment today on Capitol Hill, honoring the soldiers who died in the chaotic withdrawal from Afghanistan. I do want to ask the Vice President, do you believe you bear any responsibility in the way that withdrawal played out?
Well, I will tell you, I agreed with President Biden's decision to pull out of Afghanistan. 4 presidents said they would, and Joe Biden did. And as a result, America's taxpayers are not paying the $300 million a day we were paying for that endless war. And as of today,
Mind you, we pulled out of Afghanistan, but we put our boots in the ground in 2 other countries. Okay.
there is not one member of the United States military who is in active duty in a combat zone in any war zone around the world, the first time this century. But let's
Lies.
understand how we got to where we are. Donald Trump, when he was president, negotiated one of the weakest deals you can imagine. He calls himself a deal maker. Even his national security advisor said it was a weak, terrible deal. And here's how it went down. He bypassed the Afghan government. He negotiated directly with a terrorist organization called the Taliban. The negotiation involved the Taliban getting 5,000 Taliban terrorists released. And get this, and the president at the time invited the Taliban to Camp David, a place of storied significance for us as Americans, a place where we honor the importance of American diplomacy, where we invite and receive respected world leaders. And this former president, as president, invited them to Camp David because he does not again appreciate the role and responsibility.
I'm sorry. I just want to say this just feels like extreme gaslighting, because to me what it sounds like is a president of a country understands that there are some leaders that we can never negotiate with or talk with, and they're trying to break down that barrier by showing them respect and bringing them to a place that they bring other people they respect to come to their country. I don't see anything wrong with that. Like, so crazy.
Of the president of the United States to be commander in chief with a level of respect. And this gets back to the point of how he has consistently disparaged and demeaned members of our military, fallen soldiers, and the work that we must do to uphold the strength and the respect of the United States of America around the world.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump, your response to her saying that you began the negotiations with the Taliban.
So if you take a look at that period of time, the Taliban was killing our soldiers, a lot of them, with snipers. And I got involved with the Taliban because the Taliban was doing the killing. That's the fighting force within Afghanistan. They don't bother doing that because, they deal with the wrong people all the time. But I got involved. And Abdul is the head of the Taliban. He is still the head of the Taliban. And I told Abdul, don't do it anymore. You do it anymore, you're going to have problems. And he said, why do you send me a picture of my house? I said, you're going to have to figure that out, Abdul. And for 18 months, we had nobody killed. We did have an agreement negotiated by Mike Pompeo. It was a very good agreement. The reason it was good, we were getting out. We would have been out faster than them, but we wouldn't have lost the soldiers. We wouldn't have left many Americans behind, and we wouldn't have left $85 billion worth of brand new, beautiful military equipment behind. And just to finish, they blew it. The agreement said you have to do this, and they didn't do it. The agreement was terminated by us because they didn't do what they were supposed to do.
I want to move on.
And these people did the work.
Of course he wants to move on after that. That's a very valid point. Like, you as leaders had a simple job.
Withdrawal, and in my opinion, the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country. And by the way, that's why Russia attacked Ukraine, because they saw how incompetent she and her boss are.
President Trump, thank you. I want to move on now to race and politics in this country. Mr. President, you recently said of Vice President Harris, quote, I didn't know she was black until a number of years ago when she happened to turn black, and now she wants to be known as black. I want to ask a bigger picture question here tonight. Why do you believe it's appropriate to weigh in on the racial identity of your opponent?
I don't, and I don't care. I don't care what she is.
Start talking about it, like out of nowhere.
Right, like,
that's why it's relevant, because you obviously using it to persuade That's why it's relevant. Like, how
You
can they
can
ask?
you can clearly see what side they're on.
She's a
To your point,
presidential candidate.
you can see how they're using it to persuade. She will go into, in the same day, she'll go in front of different audiences and code switch and act blacker in front of other audiences and speak with ebonics to try to appeal to them and get their vote. Like, that's why the race thing is being brought up, because she was touting being the first Indian congresswoman, and now she's gonna be the first black president, first black woman president.
I don't care. You make a big deal out of something. I couldn't care less.
And she's
Whatever she
smiling.
wants to be is okay with me.
But those were your words. So I'm
I don't
asking.
know. I don't know. I mean,
I'm so happy.
Right, she's
What?
smiling. She was waiting for that question.
Her face is full of joy, and like this is like a genuine. This is like I feel like this isn't even like a sinister smile right now. Like this is genuine joy.
Right.
Genuine joy. She's just playing around. She was chosen to play, and she was like, "Oh my gosh, this is so exciting. This role is so cool. Like nobody knows I'm acting for real, but I am.
You're
This
making
is
such
real acting."
you're making such a good point. Like, she's actually excited right now. She'll do and say whatever the fuck is necessary. She doesn't care.
I'm on the world stage. Commentaries later. Oh, she was made for the stage. Oh, I love that performance.
Mind you, Shorty came from California. Let's keep watching.
all I can say is I read where she was not black, that she put out, and I'll say that. And then I read that she was black, and that's okay. Either one was okay with me. That's up to her. That's up to her.
Vice President Harris, your thoughts on this?
Honestly, I think it's a tragedy that we have someone who wants to be president who has consistently, over the course of his career, attempted to use race to divide the American people. You know, I do believe that the vast majority of us know that we have so much more in common than what separates us, and we don't want this kind of approach that is just constantly trying to divide us, and especially by race. And let's remember how Donald Trump started. He was a land, he owned land, he owned buildings.
How he started. Remember we talked about that?
Let's
Let's remember how he started. Forget what he's doing now. Forget what I'm doing now. Forget the question you asked me. Forget the question he asked me. Forget the question they asked him. Let's remember how he started.
Ridiculous. It's crazy.
And he was investigated because he refused to rent property to black families. Let's remember, this is the same individual who took out a full-page ad in the New York Times calling for the execution of 5 young Black and Latino boys who were innocent, the Central Park 5. Took out a full-page ad calling for their execution. This is the same individual who spread birther lies about the first Black president of the United States. And I think the American people want better than that, want better than this.
Respectfully, she is not playing fair. She is not giving him a second to say how he feels about anything. This whole time, he's just having to defend himself and catch his breath. It's truly incredible. And I feel like it's kind of unfair.
Want someone who understands, as I do, I travel our country. We see in each other a friend. We see in each other a neighbor. We don't want a leader who is constantly trying to have Americans point their fingers at each other. I meet with people all the time who tell me, can we please just have discourse about how we're going to invest in the aspirations and the ambitions and the dreams of the American people?
That's how I feel when all they keep That's how I feel when all they keep bringing up is freaking the transgender, like the abortion, the and the climate change. Like, why don't we talk about stuff that actually affects your average American? Like, all of those things are cool. Like, all of those things I support. But is that the main issue we have? I don't think so in this
The
economy.
only issue we have.
I'm saying, broski.
Knowing that regardless of people's color or the language their grandmother speaks, we all have the same dreams and aspirations and want a president who invests in those, not in hate and division.
Language
Vice President
grandmother
Harris, thank
speaks.
you.
That was so random.
I agree. She just has like these rehearsed talking points.
President Trump, this is now your third time.
Relatability.
This is the most divisive presidency
We'll watch
in
that
the history
again.
of our
My
country.
grandma's multicultural. My grandma's an immigrant.
Right. It's just we have to do this the right way. Like, it can't just. It's too much right now.
There's never been anything like it. They're destroying our country, and they come up with things like what she just said. Going back many, many years, when a lot of people, including Mayor Bloomberg, agreed with me on the Central Park Five, they admitted, they said, they pled guilty. And I said, well, if they pled guilty, they badly hurt a person, killed a person ultimately. And if they pled guilty, then they pled, we're not guilty. But this is a person that has to stretch back years, 40, 50 years ago, because there's nothing now. I built one of the greatest economies in the history of the world, and I'm going to build it again.
True.
It's going to be bigger, better, and stronger. But they're destroying our economy. They have no idea what a good economy is. Their oil.
I want to say that too because since the beginning of their presidency, it's literally been downhill in terms of inflation and job loss, home costs going up. So when he's saying they don't even know what a good economy is, I resonate with that because literally.
Policies, every single policy. And remember this, she is Biden. You know, she's trying to get away from Biden. I don't know the gentleman, she says. She is Biden. The worst inflation we've ever had, a horrible economy because inflation has made it so bad, and she can't get away with that.
Thank you. Time's up.
Briefly. Clearly, I am not Joe Biden, and I am certainly not Donald Trump. And what I do offer is a new generation of leadership for our country.
Okay.
One who believes in what is possible, one who brings a sense of optimism about what we can do instead of always
I don't feel optimistic about her. I'm just being honest.
disparaging the American people. I believe in what we can do to strengthen our small businesses, which is why I have a plan. Let's talk about our plans and let's compare the plans. I have.
What'd you say?
I feel like she's using quote unquote small businesses to appeal to the black vote.
Which is ironic because a lot of people in our, you know what, whatever.
have a plan to give startup businesses $50,000 tax deduction to pursue.
And also, like, again, when I was talking about it earlier, in order for you to get that tax deduction, that means that you spent the money that year. That means that you had the money to spend. She's saying, I'll give the tax deductions to people in their first year. Well, yeah, that's after their
Tax
first
cuts to the
year.
rich.
Right.
Tax cuts to the haves. Same thing she's accusing him of doing.
Ridiculous. Like, how does a loan, it's not even a loan. How does a $50,000 tax cut help the average American for a small business owner? Like a $50,000 small business owner tax cut.
Their ambitions, their innovation, their ideas, their hard work. I have a plan, $6,000 for young families for the first year of your child's life to help you in that most critical stage of your child's
She's just
development.
throwing numbers out.
What?
She's just throwing numbers out.
Right.
I have a plan that is about allowing people to be able to pursue what has been fleeting in terms of the American dream by offering a help with down payment of $25,000 down payment assistance for first-time home buyers.
Again, this is first-time home buyers. This is not my parents. Both of my parents who already have a house, they're not first-time home buyers. And they are greatly affected by this economy right now. And the amount that they have to pay per month for their house has gone up. This won't help them.
That's the kind of conversation, I believe, David, that people really want tonight, as
Not
opposed to a
really.
conversation that is constantly about belittling and name-calling. Let's turn the page
Vice President
and move
Harris,
forward.
thank you. Let's turn to policy.
President
Let's turn
Trump,
back
we
to
have-
policy.
I'm sorry for keep cutting it. I just want to say, throughout this whole debate, I keep thinking about, it seems that she must have some notes or some talking points she already had pre-planned, and it doesn't matter what he said in the debate that would usually sway someone to change their talking point. She has the same ones pre-written. So she had this stuff ready to go because she'll sometimes say stuff that's not even completely relevant to what was just said.
To move on. President Trump.
Let's turn to policy,
She has
please.
a plan to defund the police. She has a plan to confiscate everybody's gun.
President Trump,
she
we
has
do
a
have to
plan
move on to
not
other
allow
issues.
fracking in Pennsylvania or anywhere else.
Okay.
That's
Mr.
what her
President.
plan is until just recently.
I just need
Lindsay,
to
go ahead.
respond.
President
because-
Trump-
no, the
President
former
Trump-
president has said
No, I'm
something
sorry.
twice that I need to
No,
respond to.
I'm sorry. We're
I just
gonna
need to
move
respond
on, Vice
one
President
time
Harris.
to what he has
President
said
Trump, this
multiple
is
times.
now your
Yes.
third time running for president. You have long vowed to repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare. You have failed to accomplish that. You now say you're going to keep Obamacare, quote, unless we can do something much better. Last month, you said, quote, we're working on it. So tonight, 9 years after you first started running, do you have a plan, and can you tell us what it is?
Obamacare was lousy health care, always was. It's not very good today. And what I said, that if we come up with something, and we are working on things, we're going to do it and we're going to replace it. But remember this, I inherited Obamacare because Democrats wouldn't change it. They wouldn't vote for it. They were unanimous. They wouldn't vote to change it. If they would have done that, we would have had a much better plan than Obamacare. But the Democrats came up, they wouldn't vote for it. I had a choice to make when I was president. Do I save it and make it as good as it can be, never going to be great, or do I let it rot? And I felt I had an obligation, even though politically it would have been good to just let it rot and let it go away. I decided, and I told my people, the top people, and they're very good people. I have a lot of good people in that administration. We read about the bad ones. We had some real bad ones too, and so do they. They have really bad ones. The difference is they don't get rid of them. But let me just explain. I had a choice to make. Do I save it and make it as good as it can be, or do I let it rot? And I saved it. I did the right thing, but it's still never going to be great, and it's too expensive for people. And what we will do is we're looking at different plans. If we can come up with a plan that's going to cost our people, our population, less money and be better health care than Obamacare, then I would absolutely do it. But until then, I'd run it as good as it can be run.
So just
Valid.
so yes or no, you still do not have a plan.
I have concepts of a plan. I'm not president right now. But if we come up with something, I would only change it if we come up with something that's better and less expensive. And there are concepts and options we have to do that. And you'll be hearing about it in the not too distant future.
Vice President Harris, in 2017, you supported Bernie Sanders' proposal to do away with private insurance and create a government-run healthcare system. 2 years later, you proposed a plan that included a private insurance option. What is your plan today?
Well, first of all, I absolutely support, and over the last 4 years as vice president, private healthcare options. But what we need to do is maintain and grow the Affordable Care Act. But I'll get to
What'd you say?
Private.
Right.
that, Lindsay. I just need to respond to a previous point that the former president has made.
Remember when I was talking about her trying to get Republican voters on her side?
Right. It's definitely not working though.
I've made very clear my position on fracking. And then this business about taking everyone's guns away. Tim Walz and I are both gun owners. We're not taking anybody's guns away. So stop with the continuous lying about this stuff. As it relates to the Affordable Care Act, understand, just look at the history to know where people stand. When Donald Trump was president, 60 times he tried to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. 60 times. I was a senator at the time when I will never forget the early morning hours when it was up for a vote in the United States Senate. And the late...
Here comes another personal anecdote.
Great.
Take a shot every time you hear a personal anecdote from her.
John McCain, who you have disparaged as being, you don't like him, you said at the time, because he got caught. He was an American hero. The late, great John McCain, I will never forget that night, walked onto the Senate floor and said, no, you don't. No, you don't. No, you don't get rid of the Affordable Care Act. You have no plan. And what the Affordable Care Act has done is eliminate the ability of insurance companies to deny people with pre-existing conditions.
Did you say something? Sorry.
I don't have to tell the people watching tonight. You remember what that was like? Remember when an insurance company could deny if a child had asthma, if someone was a breast cancer survivor, if a grandparent had diabetes? And
yeah, they ate that one thing.
Thankfully, as I've been vice president and we over the last 4 years have strengthened the Affordable Care Act, we have allowed for the first time Medicare to negotiate drug prices on behalf of you, the American people. Donald Trump said he was going to allow Medicare to negotiate drug prices. He never did. We did. And now we have capped the cost of insulin at $35 a month. Since I've been vice president, we have capped the cost of prescription medication for seniors at $2,000 a year.
Which is admirable.
And when I am president, we will do that for all people, understanding that the value I bring to this is that access to health care should be a right and not just a privilege of those who can afford it. And the plan has to be to strengthen the Affordable Care Act, not get rid of it, pass as pro-law in terms of where Donald Trump stands on that.
I want to move to an issue that's important for a lot of...
She made a mistake. Number one, John McCain fought Obamacare for 10 years. But it wasn't only him. It were all of the Democrats that kept it going. And you know what? We can do much better than Obamacare, much less money. But she won't improve private insurance for people, private medical insurance. That's another thing she doesn't want to get. People are paying privately for insurance that have worked hard and made money, and they want to have private. She wants everybody to be on government insurance where you wait 6 months for an operation that you need immediately.
President Trump, thank you. We have another issue that we'd like to get to that's important for a number of Americans, in particular younger voters, and that's climate change. President Trump, with regard to the environment, you say that we have to have clean air and clean water. Vice President Harris, you call climate change an existential threat. The question to you both tonight is, what would you do to fight climate change? And Vice President Harris, we'll start with you. 1 minute for you each.
Well, the former president had said that climate change is a hoax. And what we know is that it is very real. You ask anyone who lives in a state who has experienced these extreme weather occurrences, who now is either being denied home insurance or is being jacked up. You ask any...
I just want to say a lot of these extreme weather occurrences are because of HAARP, because of literally weather modification programming and cloud seeding programming spearheaded by the government. A lot of these natural disasters, for example, those crazy Hawaiian fires, California fires, hurricanes.
Anybody who has been the victim of what that means in terms of losing their home, having nowhere to go, we know that we can actually deal with this issue. The young people of America care deeply about this issue. And I am proud that as vice president over the last 4 years, we have invested $1 trillion in a clean energy economy, while we have also increased domestic gas production to historic levels. We have created over 800,000 new manufacturing jobs while I have been vice president. We have invested in clean energy to the point that we are opening up factories around the world. Donald Trump said he was going to create manufacturing jobs. He lost manufacturing jobs. And I'm also proud to have the endorsement of the United Auto Workers and Sean Fain, who also know that part of building a clean energy economy includes investing in American made products, American automobiles. It
Which is literally what he's been running on for a bit.
includes growing what we can do around American manufacturing and opening up auto plants, not closing them like happened under Donald Trump.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
That didn't happen under Donald Trump. Let me just tell you, they lost 10,000 manufacturing jobs this last month. It's going, they're all leaving. They're building big auto plants in Mexico, in many cases owned by China. They're building these massive plants, and they think they're going to sell their cars into the United States because of these people. What they have given to China is unbelievable. But we're not going to let that. We'll put tariffs on those cars so they can't come into our country because.
And I think that's actually excellent because a lot of countries are definitely getting over exporting or importing American labor and exporting their goods into our countries at a low rate. Like, we should be able to reap some of the benefits of their profit from our consumer base.
They will kill the United Auto Workers and any auto worker, whether it's in Detroit or South Carolina or any other place. What they've done to business and manufacturing in this country is horrible. We have nothing because they refuse. You know, Biden doesn't go after people because supposedly China paid him millions of dollars. He's afraid to do it between him and his son. They get all this money from Ukraine. They get all this money from all of these different countries. And then you wonder, why is he so loyal to this one, that one, Ukraine, China? Why is he? Why did he get 3.5?
Well, there goes the answer to your question earlier. Why are they so loyal to Ukraine? It's money.
$1 million from the mayor of Moscow's wife. Why did she pay him $3.5 million? This is a crooked administration, and they're selling our country down the tubes.
President Trump, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll be right back with closing statements from both of our candidates. An historic night, this ABC News presidential debate from Philadelphia. Back in a moment.
And I'll skip to the closing remarks.
Oh,
I'm skipping to the closing remarks, yeah.
I said, well, that was interesting.
Right. I'm excited for what they have to say.
Muir and Lindsay Davis.
Welcome back tonight. The time has come for closing statements, and Vice President Harris, we begin with you.
So I think you've heard tonight two very different visions for our country. One that is focused on the future, and the other that is focused on the past.
I'm sorry to
and
stop.
an attempt to take us.
I'm sorry to stop so early, but I just want to say, and I'll go back, but I just want to say this entire debate, she's been putting words into his mouth and saying what he represents, while also being completely wrong about that. But that's just incredible.
Two very different visions for our country. One that is focused on the future, and the other that is focused on the past, and an attempt to take us backward. But we're not going back. And I do believe that the American people know we all have so much more in common than what separates us. And we can chart a new way forward. And a vision of that includes having a plan, understanding the aspirations, the dreams, the hopes, the ambition of the American people, which is why I intend to create an opportunity economy, investing in small businesses, in new families, in what we can do around protecting seniors, what we can do that is about giving hardworking folks a break and bringing down the cost of living. I believe in what we can do together that is about sustaining America's standing in the world and ensuring that we have the respect that we so rightly deserve, including respecting our military and ensuring we have the most lethal fighting force in the world. I will be a president that will protect our fundamental rights and freedoms, including the right of a woman to make decisions about her own body and not have her government tell her what to do. I'll tell you, I started my career as a prosecutor. I was a DA, I was an attorney general, a United States senator, and now vice president. I've only had one client, the people. And I'll tell you, as a prosecutor, I never asked a victim or a witness, are you a Republican or a Democrat?
Instagrammable.
The only thing I ever asked them Are you okay? And that's the kind of president we need right now. Someone who cares about you and is not putting themselves
What did you have? Oh.
first. I intend to be a president for all Americans and focus on what we can do over the next 10 and 20 years to build back up our country by investing right now.
How is she going to say the next 10 and 20 years when she doesn't even have a plan for for any of the years coming up? Like, okay.
In you, the American people.
We want change right now. We want
I'm
change
saying,
within
like,
5 years.
What?
What do you mean? Oh, within the next decade, we'll have all the current problems fixed. With me, I promise. What?
Dude, anyway, 1 sec. She says
You can only be up there for 8 years anyway. What are you talking about?
literally.
The cost of living. I believe in what we can do together. That is about sustaining America's standing in the world and ensuring that we have the respect that we so rightly deserve, including respecting our military and ensuring we have the most lethal fighting force in the world. I will be a president that will protect our fundamental rights and freedoms, including the right of a woman to make decisions about her own body and not have her government tell her what to do. I'll tell you, I started my career as a prosecutor. I was a DA.
Yeah, sorry, I just wanted to harp on this for a moment. This whole time, she's really been in her lawyer bag. She's really been approaching this like a lawyer and not necessarily like a reasoned human being. And the thing is, lawyers are really good at those tactics that the average human isn't. And she's really in her bag with
At
that.
disarming your opponent.
What?
At disarming your opponent.
Yeah.
In a debate.
And the whole thing about in court systems, the person who wins is the person who makes the other person look the worst.
I intend to be a president for all Americans and focus on what we can do over the next 10.
So she just started.
President Harris, thank you. President Trump?
So she just started by saying she's going to do this, she's going to do that, she's going to do all these wonderful things. Why hasn't she done it? She's been there for 3.5 years. They've had 3.5 years to fix the border. They've had 3.5 years to create jobs and all the things we talked about. Why hasn't she done it? She should leave right now, go down to that beautiful White House, go to the Capitol, get everyone together and do the things you want to do, but you haven't done it and you won't do it because you believe in things that the American people don't believe in. You believe in things like we're not going to frack, we're not going to take fossil fuel, we're not going to do things that are going to make this country strong, whether you like it or not. Germany tried that. And within 1 year, they were back to building normal energy plants. We're not ready for it. We can't sacrifice our country for the sake of bad vision. But I just ask one simple question. Why didn't she do it? We're a failing nation. We're a nation that's in serious decline. We're being laughed at all over the world. All over the world, they're laughed. I know the leaders very well.
True.
They're coming to see me. They call me.
So
We're laughed at all over the world. They don't understand what happened to us as a nation. We're not a leader. We don't have any idea what's going on. We have wars going on in the Middle East. We have wars going on with Russia and Ukraine. We're going to end up in a third world war, and it'll be a war like no other because of nuclear weapons, the power of weaponry. I rebuilt our entire military. She gave a lot of it away to the Taliban. She gave it to Afghanistan. What these people have done to our country, and maybe toughest of all, is allowing millions of people to come into our country. Many of them are criminals, and they're destroying our country. The worst president, the worst vice president in the history of our country.
President Trump, thank you. And that is our ABC News presidential debate from here in Philadelphia at the National Constitution Center.
A fraction of the time that hers took.
Before we get into our general synopsis, briefly what he just spoke about, oh my gosh, wait.
Millions of these people.
Yeah, so if we can get a little esoteric here for a moment, I just wanted to say something that's been on my mind for a while, and it's the fact that President Trump, we all know he's a Gemini. We all know that President Trump is a Gemini and he's an air sign, which means he is able to see a lot of things that the average person can't see in terms of how people act and just how people operate. You probably know just as well as I do that, and probably more than me because you're an air sign, that air signs can perceive human behavior in a way that a lot of people will overlook. I'm bringing this up because he talks a lot about how the micro is the macro. We keep talking about all these irrelevant subjects, but something like immigration, the amount of millions of people coming into our country at a rapid pace, has a big effect on the economy. Just thinking about when I was dating, there was this guy I was dating for a bit, and his dad worked at, typical, Chicago story. His dad worked at like a factory, and he was talking about how basically recently a lot of immigrants have been coming in because it's like paid per day, and because of the amount of people coming in, it's supply and demand, so they're willing to work for cheaper, and so a lot of them get hired more, and it's a tale as old as time. We all know this, but some of us have actual personal anecdotes. My boyfriend right now, his sister owns a chain of restaurants and she employs a few illegal immigrants, partially because she saves money with it. She's doing it out of the goodness of her heart, but she's saving money by paying them under the table. This is taking away American jobs. Like, this has a ripple effect on our economy. And yeah, and then also going back to there's something else I wanted to say.
Beautiful White House. Go to the and within one.
Oh, also, and sorry to blabber on right now, I wanted to talk about how he was saying that the world leaders look at us and they're like, what is going on? If you watch a basic ass news coverage of anything going on in America from an international source, you'll see people chiming in from countries all over the world. And a lot of us, or a lot of them during this presidency, have been laughing at us, have been saying, what the hell is going on, have been in genuine wonderment of the sheer stupidity of our administration and just like how mindless Joe is. These are average people. So I can't imagine the leaders of the country who have insight and intel, how they perceive us. So it's like they keep saying that Trump looks so bad, but it's like, if random people on the internet can comment and see that our country is falling apart, you mean world leaders can't? But yeah, that was just on that. There's more to unpack. In general, how did you feel about this? Like, are there any major takeaways or like some things that really pulled at you?
The acting, the fakeness of it, the fact that there was no audience,
Mm-hmm.
her facial expressions, their compared body language, their hair. Both of their hair pieces are pretty good. Um, Kamala's connection to the news outlet. Just so many things that are so obvious. Like, and they're like in the moment. Like, it's not like we found out about them later. Like, they're all at the same time, live in the moment deception.
Live deception.
Like what point is it gonna reach if it's at this point now?
No,
What
seriously.
point of exposure and comfort is it going to come to when it comes to the brainwashing and the manipulation, the perception?
Right.
Yeah.
Literally, how the deception is crazy. Like the live deception is crazy. And I also wanted to show this New York Post article. Wow, so many ads. Can't escape it. But it says ABC debate moderator Lindsay Davis was a member of the same storied sorority as Kamala Harris.
Home team advantage.
Now it has come to light that the two were both members of Alpha Kappa Alpha. Harris,
So what? Her?
yep. Harris became a
No.
member of the Sisterhood when she was an undergraduate student at Howard University.
No.
So,
No.
so just for context for everybody watching this, the moderator who was asking Kamala questions, that wasn't their first time meeting. They were sorority sisters at the University of Virginia. For context.
Like, what happened to conflict of interest? This is a presidential
What
debate.
happened to conflict of interest?
Like, this is a presidential debate.
Can I be honest with you?
And as a lawyer and prosecutor, she knows exactly what she's doing in detail. Like,
Can I
in detail.
can I be so honest with you? If I You and I are best friends. If I were to go and do something and I have this transcripts, I would definitely give you the intel and give you everything. I would help you out as much as I could because you're my best friend. It's biased, it's messed up, but you're my best friend. And I'm not saying they're best friends. It's been reported that they're good friends, but I'm pretty sure, especially black woman to black woman, they would help each other out, especially because if Kamala becomes president, I'm sure Lindsay Davis would just rise up. They're sorority sisters. So that's interesting.
But her hair looks great.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, but
Irrelevant.
like,
Irrelevant,
I
but
mean, not super irrelevant because when she was a kid, she looks Indian. Like, I'll show you this. This is why Trump was like asking if she's black because this is her and her family. This is
right.
Kamala. Kamala. And of course, there's not too many pictures of her, but this is her as a baby. And her mom.
Yeah.
I can't hear you. What did you say?
I said, oh, cute.
It is cute.
So
This
her
is her.
dad is black?
This is her sister. This is her mom, and this is her. So I kind of understand how this question arose for him. And before we log off, because I know it's currently at this time it's 4 a.m. or 4:30 over here. I'm 5:30 over there. So I just kind of wanted to really quick look at their policies on their websites because I never looked at them myself. We can just briefly skim through them. Okay. So Vice President Harris has made it clear that building up the middle class will be a defining goal in her presidency.
What
That's why
about
she'll make it a
the
top priority to
Muslims?
bring down costs and increase economic security. All right, let's see how. Cut taxes for middle class families. Oh, this is long, but we'll.
Yay for the middle class. Win for the middle class.
Right. Okay. Under their plan, more than 100 million working and middle class families will get a tax cut. They will do this by restoring two tax cuts designed to help the middle class: the child tax credit and the earned income tax credit. Through these two programs, millions of Americans get to keep more of their hard-earned income. Let me see. So, all right, we have the child tax credit and earned income. What is earned income? Unlike Donald Trump. So it says ensuring no one earning less than $400,000 a year will pay more in taxes. Which, okay. I need to know more about this earned income tax credit and how. I'm not really sure how these little two policies are going to repair the middle class. Well, actually, you know what? That's just cutting taxes. All right, let's see. Make rent more affordable. Okay. Vice President Harris is always set up for renters and homeowners. Let's see. Vice President Harris has put forward a comprehensive plan to build 3 million more rental units and homes that are affordable to end the national housing supply crisis in her first term. That I can honestly get behind. 3 more rental units of homes that are affordable. I will say that number seems kind of low if it's talking about all across America, but you gotta start somewhere. Okay. Vice President Harris knows rent is too high and will sign legislation to outlaw new forms of price fixing by corporate owners. So as more homes are built and affordable housing supply increases, Vice President will provide first-time home buyers $25,000 to help with their down payment. All right. So surface level, this sounds pretty good, surface level sounds pretty good, I guess. We're gonna have 3 million rental home units and first home buyer. So we're not gonna have more houses, we're gonna have more rental units that are like affordable housing, which sounds very Democrat, and 25,000 for first time home. Okay, still not the general population, but still okay. We're gonna grow small businesses and invest in entrepreneurs. All right, cool. Let's see. Okay, tripling the small business administrations lending to black-owned businesses. I have to see the numbers on that. Okay, so here it is.
Check out.
She's put forward a plan to help small businesses and entrepreneurs grow. She set an ambitious goal of 25 million new business applications by the end of the first term, over 10 million more than Trump saw during his term. If that happens, that's actually cool. To help achieve this, she will expand the startup expense tax deduction from new businesses from 5,000 to 50,000. Valid. My only thing is, are you actually gonna do this? Because these are some good ideas, but we've heard it all before.
Right. I don't think they are.
Um.
They're going to, once
Okay.
the time comes, I think they're going to be denied by the House and the Senate. I think Congress or the groups of people that ultimately decide on this.
So the thing is,
before they even bring it to them, they're going to change it up in ways that they have not mentioned to us. Because honestly, that's what happens. That's what they do. That's what they like to do.
the thing is, like, they're smart because they know how to get our hearts. Like, the thing is, what she's saying is, we've got programs for you. Fuck that. Fix the inflation rate. The to go into a program, you have to be a specific subset of person, and you also have to apply for it. What about just making the economy livable? That's like all we're asking for. We're not asking for all these tax deductions. Again, if you can't even afford to buy these things in the first place. But
Like we're not so prosperous that we're so excited about, oh my gosh, we're gonna get tax break after the first year of having a child. Oh my gosh. There's not such a population of these small business owners for it to be significant to the entire population.
I'm saying, and you know what? Dare I say, it is actually crazy because I don't know if I'm getting to conspiracy nut mode right now, but I'm like, they probably know that there are so many young entrepreneurs out there already who have made their million and we're past that peak. Not past it, actually, probably not past it. But the vast majority have already made their LLC. So it's like they're not going to be first time. But let's just go to Trump's though, and we can close out. DonaldJTrump.com. Platform. First tab. Let's get it. Oh, shite. Oh, whoa, alright, nice. Clear and concise. That's how we like it. Clear and concise. Forget the jargon. Alright, boom. We can just read all of them straight up. Number one, seal the border and stop migrant invasion. That's a valid point. Like, I wanted to talk about that a lot, but let me just keep going. Carry out the largest deportation operation in American history. Obviously, very polarizing. However, it depends on the type of people you're deporting. End inflation and make America affordable again. Okay, period. End inflation. Let's go. Down with that. Make America the dominant energy producer in the world by far. Okay, I like it. Okay. Stop outsourcing and turn the United States into a manufacturing superpower. I resonate with that. We outsource way too much. Large tax cuts for workers and no tax on tips. Workers. See, this is the thing. Workers is everybody. That's everybody. No tax on tips. Valid. A lot of service workers, like bartenders, restaurant, like a lot. Okay.
So
Defender.
is this not giving for the people,
I'm
Republicans
saying,
for the
like, this is
people?
how I'm like,
Is
I,
this not giving party switch? I don't know.
right, right, for
Just a
real.
little bit.
And it's like, all right, let's just keep going. Defend our defend our Constitution, our Bill of Rights, and our fundamental freedoms, including freedom of speech, freedom of religion, and the right to keep and bear arms. Okay, Constitution. Prevent World War III, restore peace in Europe and the Middle East, and bring a great Iron Dome missile defense shield over our entire country. All made in America. This is a good argument. I mean, like, made in America, let's go, more jobs, more
Great
money, prevent
Iron
World War III.
Dome missile defense shield? Is that a metaphor?
Probably. Well, we gotta unpack that. And the weaponization of government against the American.
Hmm.
Boy!
These are some
These
broad
are my vote.
these are some broad claims
Oh
here.
my
Like,
gosh.
bro, who is he talking
I'm not
to?
gonna lie. We have this is like a once in a lifetime type of candidate. I'm not trying to sound like but like
I
I
feel
don't
like
think
he's trying to sweeten us up
no, but
with this statement just a little bit.
even if he is, the acknowledgement of the government weaponizing
Hmm.
is so powerful. Nobody does that. Nobody, not even the most radical people. Well, yes, they do. But like to make that their platform, you can't even lie, that's powerful. That's cuz there's
Well,
20.
he can do it because he has the power. A lot of third party candidates have, addressed this. So it's
Yes,
interesting to see him address it right now and keep this power. Like
but
I'm wondering, I'm
but
really
I'm
wondering,
saying
like,
but I'm
yeah.
saying it's farther than just talking about it. It's literally making it a part of your platform for this is what I want to change about America, make me president because of this. It's more than just like going on interviews and talking about it. You know what I mean? Like he's like this is important to him. Wow. Okay, keep going. Stop the migrant crime epidemic. That's major. Demolish the foreign drug cartels. Nice. Crush gang violence and lock up violent offenders. Okay. Rebuild our cities, including Washington, D.C. That's major. There's too many homeless people in our nation's capital. Washington, D.C., making them safe, clean, and beautiful again. Strengthen and modernize our military, making it without question the strongest and most powerful in the world. It was true earlier when he was talking about how he really revamped our military and implemented new things that made it better than it was. And they kind of let that go to waste. Keep the US dollar as the world's reserve currency. This is so major because literally because of Joe Biden's presidency, we have to do an episode on BRICS. Because of Joe Biden's presidency, BRICS, oh my god. Oh my god. The Brazil, Russia, Iran, China, South Africa alliance where they're starting to overtake the gold. Oh my god, whatever. This wouldn't have happened if Biden wasn't president. But fight for and protect Social Security and Medicare with no cuts, including no changes to their retirement age. Yes. Because they literally they keep increasing the retirement age. I know that because my grandma, the retirement age increased on her. Cancel the electric vehicle mandate and cut
What
costly
is
and
that?
burdensome regulations. Cut federal funding for any school pushing critical race theory, radical gender ideology, and other inappropriate racial, sexual, or political content
Hmm.
on our children. Real, let's just keep it innocent in the
So
classroom.
critical race theory was pushed by what, like, by what side? Like, how did that come to be?
Man, these
'Cause
people
the
are.
whole time I thought he agreed with this.
Dude, you know
Thought
what?
this was some Republican doing.
So I have strong opinions on critical race theory, but I'm going to keep it extremely brief. All I'm going to say is for a few years recently, I've been thinking, I don't know how productive it is to keep us in this constant loop of thought that we are all different. I think about sometimes if Black History Month is as good for us as they try to make it seem, because it's just basically trauma porn. It just keeps reminding us of the bad things about us and doesn't talk enough about the great things about us. And I feel like a lot of critical race theory classes tend to really lean on stereotypes and somewhat justify them. And in a way kind of reinforce these stereotypes and in a way program people to act that way. So I'm okay with doing away with critical race theory, and I'm okay with talking less about how our races make us different unless everybody's being glorified. You know, because only the white guys who are look good and then everybody else is seen as savages. Um so I don't really mess with that. You have
What's
any?
the electric vehicle mandate?
Oh my god. Yes. So, I don't know if you noticed, but in the recent years yeah, I don't know if you noticed, but in the recent years a lot of the major car companies have started switching some of their main models to electric. So for example, Ford Mustang, they switched their Mustang to an electric vehicle knowing damn well that most of the people that drive their cars love that motor. They love the gas. They love um that motor. The sound that comes with the electric vehicles are silent, but it's more than that. I think the reason why they're pushing electric so much is because they're trying to cut the dependence on fossil fuels, quote unquote. But I think it's deeper than rap. I feel like in which a lot of Republicans have been talking about, electric vehicles are easy to control Like we also leave the world behind. The Teslas, like electric vehicles, you can basically hack into them.
Right.
Um, and also they're sucking up our power grid, which is honestly more of a limited resource than oil is, because every year more oil deposits are sprouting out of nowhere in earth. Oil is like seen as the oil of the earth, like it literally sprouts up out of nowhere, or the blood of the earth. Like God gave it to us as for energy, and
Plus, electric vehicles are harder to fix on your own.
there's
They make it not just electric, but they're starting to make features. My boyfriend and I were talking about this. He said that they're starting to make the features so unified, and yeah, so unified that it makes it hard to fix on your own and to fix one singular thing if something goes wrong.
that
Like if
makes so
something
much
goes wrong,
sense.
everything goes wrong because everything's connected to each other
Yeah.
in that way.
Yeah.
In such a way that you would have to, like, you would have to take it to a dealership.
It makes so much sense. That makes so much sense, because especially if most of the car's programming and all that stuff, like guys are used to being able to, like, if their entire car, if every part is fucked up, they can one by one replace it. You
And
know?
it's hard to bring it to like a regular mechanic. Like you have to bring it to the dealership where you got it
Yeah.
for them to reprogram it. Or
Right. And this whole mandate is basically making it so that certain companies have to make a certain amount of electric cars, or we have to cut the amount of gas cars that we create, or gas cars that we have on the street, and push for more electric cars. Literally make by law. Um, but yeah, it's crazy. And moving on, number 17, keeping men out of women's sports. I understand what he's talking about, because recently that has been an issue where a lot of transgender women, so previously men, have been beating women's world records and
at
have been.
first I was skeptical about that, but then I started noticing more and more incidents.
Yeah,
as
same.
you just said.
Same. At first I was skeptical, but then there was just more. Number 18, deport pro-Hamas radicals and make our college campuses safe and patriotic again.
I don't know about this one.
Yeah, because who are the pro-Hamas radicals he's talking about? Is he talking about
Anybody saying
students?
pro-Palestine, bro?
Yeah, I don't know.
Like the student protesters on their college campuses is who I'm assuming they're referring to.
But that's the thing. I don't know if I can assume that. I don't know.
So who is on the college campuses not making it safe?
Well, if he's saying deport, then I'm assuming that they're probably immigrants that are coming to college campuses, making them unsafe. But I don't know. I have to look deeper into this. I'm curious about that, because that is the one thing that I'm like, Secure our elections, including same-day voting, voter identification, paper ballots, and proof of citizenship. I strongly agree with that, because there's way too much voter fraud. Our last election, there's so much voter fraud, and I love paper ballots, because I don't know if you remember, but there were so many quote-unquote technicalities and complications with voter machines, to the point where they had to count later than anticipated because of malfunctions with voter machines all across the country. And same day voting, yes, because like I was telling you earlier, there's mail-in ballots where people get their ballots months ahead of time and can cast multiple votes because they'll get multiple ballots in the mail. So it's much more effective to do same day voting, like the classic way. And number 20, unite our country by bringing it to new and record levels of success. Did you hear that Melania is gonna come out with a tell-all book soon?
Bro.
Or
No, I just saw I saw somebody make a meme of her and be like, oh my gosh, yes, she's low key such a diva. And then I saw a comment under that, I think it was a TikTok, and somebody said, oh, I bet she's gonna come out with a book soon. So I know you're not telling me that it's confirmed that she's gonna come out with a book.
yeah, no, it's already on the Amazon bestseller list, and it comes out October 1st.
That's hilarious.
People
That's so funny.
People are really curious to hear her story. The angle she's taking with this book, because I saw the ad video for it, is it's like she's been misunderstood. People have demonized her, despite her efforts to be like a humanitarian, I guess. And she kind of wants to tell her story in her way. Can you still see my screen?
Yeah.
Basically, what I just did is at the bottom of this, because I was like, it's cool that he has bullet points, but
Read more.
but he doesn't. I was reading this like, but what are the actual policies? And then you click read more, and then there's a whole document, which in contrast to Kamala is very interesting, like a whole 16-page document with like with actual every single point. He has 20 points, and every single point he delves into. Wow. Empower American families. Republicans will promote a culture that values the sanctity of marriage, the blessings of childhood, the foundation.
What do you mean, and which policies that punish families is he talking about?
Oh, we can get into that. The blessings of childhood, the foundational role of families, and supports working parents. We will end policies that punish families. Honestly, just the first thing I'm thinking about, which isn't necessarily relevant to today's time, but you know how for a long period of time women who got Section 8 housing had to have proof that the husband wasn't in the house?
Wasn't aware of that.
Yeah, for a long time that was a big part, and to the point where women had to, if they knew that the person who's going to check in on their Section 8 housing was coming, they had to hide their men, and basically had to be on their toes and know that their man couldn't really leave evidence of being living there, or else they could risk, because you had to have evidence that you're a single mother. So again, we will end policies that punish families. There's a lot of them. You have to have this. You can't have this. But anyway. Yeah, thank you so much for your time. This was amazing. We could definitely go more into this, but this everybody can check this out on his page. It's very fascinating that he has a whole 19-page document about this dedication to the forgotten men and women of America. This man is inspiring. Like, bro, I remember
his writer is very good and very well paid.
Right. I remember in the very beginning when they really psyoped me into hating the phrase "Make America Great Again." When that's a powerful statement. It says a lot. It says that America was great. Well, it doesn't say a lot. It says a little,
I've always liked the slogan, just not like the crazy stuff I heard about him. But yeah, I've always liked it. I was like, that's fire. Like, he did that.
Right, like
he did that with that slogan. It's giving, yes we can.
Right.
Yes we can was popular, but this.
Right, and I was about
to. He took it one step further. He made merch.
Right.
And the merch blew up.
No, for real. Again, Gemini, like, I think about all the time how he's a Gemini and how much influence that has in, like, his innovative thinking. Branding is everything. People all over were so proud to wear that merch.
Especially here.
And the ripple effect that creates, like, even just the uniformity at his rallies of all those people wearing hats, that energy they feel of togetherness.
And red is a color that excites.
Yeah.
Red is a color that scientifically proven gets your heart rate up.
Right.
So that was a very interesting choice, a wise choice,
Yeah.
a smart choice.
Right. It's definitely giving. I mean, the
I
innovation.
mean, red also for Republican.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense too. I also noticed, like, I keep thinking, why does he always wear that blue suit with the white shirt and the red tie? And I'm like, oh, America. And then he switches it up sometimes with the blue, but he literally only wears that every time. You notice that? Because other presidents, they'll have different outfits depending on how they feel. He is very smart about imagery. He wears the same outfit every time, like Steve Jobs. He wants you to
Bro
get
is a businessman and an actor.
he
Like,
wants you to get a specific image in your mind when you see him, and it works. He wears the same outfit everywhere he goes, like a cartoon character.
businessmen work with people. That's how they make money.
Yeah.
They have to work with people at some point, even if they don't want to, or even if their business is very cut and dry, whatever. They have to work with you. Have to work with people.
Yeah.
So he knows, and he's good at it. He's good at what he does. And America's a business. That's why he's so good at what he does.
Yeah.
And even though some of his methods suck, freaking successful. Unfortunately,
I mean, it's like
somewhere in the beginning. Unfortunately,
I'm realizing more so that he's kind of just like, and I'm not necessarily trying to take his side, but I understand truly recently that he's misunderstood. Like, not only is he an old ass person, which most old people genuinely speak their mind and don't care. Not only is he old, but he's a Gemini. So of course he's gonna have a loose cannon mouth. But he is the definition of innovation and trying to bring us close to progress into like the most efficient and modern way of thinking, which seems very Gemini to me. So like I just think about that a lot. Like it's definitely giving innovation. It's definitely giving the ability to see the micro and the macro. I never see presidents talk about these fringe ass news stories like they're major news. Like he names drops all these different political leaders from all these different countries. He's tapped into like his mind is he's there, you know what I'm saying? He's tapped to all this information and clearly keeping
and he's
up.
been low key because he's always been friends with politicians even before he ever ran.
Yeah, so I mean, dude.
Like he was there in the rooms, in the conversations, even if not to a certain clearance, he was there in some of those rooms.
It's crazy too, like I'm just in one of my last points. It's interesting how during the debate Kamala was using a lot of kerfuffle and emotional tactics to try to make you, and even on her websites with the policy it was the same thing, but nothing really too rooted in fact, nothing getting to the meat and potatoes of how America's suffering and how to get us through that. On the other hand, Donald Trump on the stage and in his website is very cut and dry, very very clear about how he has the future he sees for America and how he wants to get there. Very clear. But with Kamala, there's a lot of ambiguity. It's like, okay, well, how are you gonna get this to happen? But Trump is.
I have a plan. I just have a plan. Just trust me, bro.
So, yeah, this was awesome. This was a great debate. This was great everything. Thank you. Till next time, question everything. Let us know what you think in the comments. We want to know. Do you agree?
Please
Do you
do.
disagree? We're curious. Okay, have a great night.